What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. It is Tuesday, March 30th, and today we have a very special guest joining us from her cozy quarantine, all the way in Istanbul. She is the only member of her team yet to catch COVID, so I think we need to applaud that. She is a member of our women's national team, a former Michigan Wolverine, and her name is Jen Cross. Jen, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, I am okay, which in 2021, okay is fantastic. Yeah, like my team is currently going through another COVID outbreak, and so I so far have tested negative this round. So we'll see. I'm still waiting on some more results,
Ha-
but who knows?
Has your vitamin D intake been high? Is this why you're
I
staying
don't
safe?
I haven't, I mean, I've been pretty careful since the pandemic started a year ago. Like I've been one of those people like I still wash my groceries. I still like change clothes completely. I know it's ridiculous. I know you don't have to, but I can't help it. Um I've been like fully exposed like the second time. This is the fourth time my team has gotten a COVID outbreak, which is insane, but the second time we were on a bus trip, our longest away match, and we were 6 hours into the road trip when we got an email saying one of our players who was on the bus had tested positive, and we were halfway through the trip, so we stopped, we turned around and drove all the way back to Istanbul, and the people directly in front of me and beside me who weren't wearing masks because we were on the team bus both ended up testing positive, and I never got it. And like
Wow.
I did multiple tests. I don't have antibodies. Like I did not get it. So it's been this like joke all year. And now I'm the last person on my team who hasn't gotten it still. So I
Okay.
don't know. I
So
don't know what I'm
so
doing.
we need to take you and do some testing and figure out whatever's going on with you, and we're just going to inject it in everyone else in volleyball. That's essentially what we
Exactly.
have to do here.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if it's my blood or what happened. I'm apparently immune right now. Who knows?
dude, well,
Watch, I'll get a positive test right
that's
now.
yeah, absolutely. Like during this podcast, you're going to get an email being like,
Yeah.
"Sorry, Jen, you need."
I'm actually it should be tonight. So like that would be pretty entertaining if I got the result live. That would be
All
hilarious, but
right.
also
Well,
terrible.
let's like part of me hopes for that, but then a larger part of me hopes that it doesn't come back positive because
Yeah.
I
I'm
mean,
about 50-50 too,
yeah.
so don't worry.
To be
It
honest,
would be entertaining.
I'm pretty sure I got it, but in like February because I
Mm,
was in Vancouver in February, and a bunch of people that I knew in the volleyball world were all getting sick, and
hmm.
like multiple of my friends were telling me like, oh, like this is the sickest I've been, and this is when we were just starting to hear about coronavirus, but like it wasn't in
Yeah.
Canada. Well, we didn't know it was in Canada, but like since then, like they've done tests and they found traces of coronavirus on the West Coast in 2019,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I'm pretty sure I got it, but I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah.
All of
Thank
this
you.
came though on the heels of you doing and your team doing something pretty amazing. You guys won the 2021 CEV Challenge Cup, which first of all, congratulations for that because that is
Thank you.
awesome. Winning a trophy at any time is amazing. You're winning a European trophy like that is incredible. It was the first time ever for your club. Um,
Hmm.
like what was that feeling like? Getting to lift that trophy because I feel like
Yeah.
I feel like it's really hard to win a trophy in at the pro level. When you're like a kid, you play like club and you win a trophy or you medal every weekend, and then you become pro and it's just like, damn, like this isn't easy.
Yeah, which is funny because this actually like every single pro year I've actually won a championship or a cup or something, which that's cool. Go me, I guess. I know.
Yeah, you have
Think about it.
actually. Yeah,
I
I'm
have. Yeah,
you did a
I have.
Pladiv
So
and you did
that's
in Dresdner and
hmm.
um
Yep. So this is the first time for Challenge Cup for this club. So it was really, really important to the club. Um, with like how crazy everything has been this year with COVID, like we didn't really even know what to expect. And we actually we played Turkish Airlines in the semifinals, which is actually Marcello's who used to be the coach of Canada's pro team.
mhm.
And we obviously have played Turkish Airlines a couple of times in season, and we've had really, really close games. I know a lot of the girls; they're friends of mine.
And that's
and they
for the people at home, like Turkish Airlines is like a top 4 team in Turkey, and Turkey is considered one of the, if it's either Turkey or Italy are the 2 strongest leagues. And just for reference, Turkish Airlines finished 4th in the standings, and you guys finished 8th.
Yeah, we actually, it's very frustrating, but we actually lost 7 5-set matches this season.
Oh.
So if we had won those, we actually would have finished 4th. It's really close between 4 and 8, and then there's a gap between 1 to 3. The top 3 teams in Turkey have always and will forever be pretty great. And then there's there's a middle section, and then there's a gap between 8 and everyone else. But Turkish Airlines is a really, really good quality team. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they actually they had COVID during the time our first game was supposed to be. So it got rescheduled. So we actually played the matches back to back.
Yeah, I remember that.
So they both went 5, both games. So we played 10 sets. Well, technically 11. Wait. Yeah, 11 sets.
Why 11?
Because we played no, you didn't. Did we play a golden set?
You didn't play a golden set. You won 3-2, 3-2 both times, and your 17-year-old went absolutely off.
Yeah. So the first match, that's why, because we won the first match in 5, and then because it's CEV, like if you, based on the number of sets, you win the first game. Like you could only have to win 1 or 2 sets, but because we won in 5, we could lose in 5, and then we could play a golden set and still win. But we ended up winning in 5 both matches. But they were like very intense, emotional matches, it was really, really fun to play. Especially, as I said, like Marcello's an amazing coach, and he always coaches really, really good teams that are really well coached. Marcello is a fantastic coach. Like anyone who knows him knows how much he knows about volleyball. Whether you like his style, whether it works for you or not, that's like a completely separate issue for me. But I really like his style. He's aggressive. He's honest. He demands a lot of his players. So yeah, I personally don't mind his he's Italian. What do you expect? But obviously some people feel differently. But for me personally, like I like his style, but the team, he really got them to buy in as a team on Turkish Airlines. So they're very close knit, really good quality team, and we managed to beat them twice in 5. So that was huge. Yeah. And then we played Blaj, who is the top team in Romania.
Did you play for Blaj?
No, I never played in Romania.
You've never played in Romania?
No.
Okay. Someone has played for Blaj along the way, but as we were talking before the show, there's a lot of Canadians now that play professionally, and it's very hard to track all of them at the same time because, but sorry.
It's a lot.
Continue with your Challenge Cup story.
Yeah, so then we traveled to Romania. It was actually the first time I've had to travel in an airplane this season, which with COVID and everything, which is not normal. Normally for Champions League or whatever, I've always been traveling, but we actually hosted the first and second round of CEV in Istanbul, and then semifinals were obviously against the Turkish team. So that was kind of strange, because who's traveling right now except for athletes and politicians? You shouldn't be traveling. So that was strange, but we went to Romania. I think for Blaj, we just play such different systems. A lot of Blaj's players are on the Serbian national team or have been in the past, and they run a very different style. They're a lot of high balls. Their defensive system is quite different too.
There was just not a good matchup. You guys were clearly better than them. I mean, it was.
Thank you.
It was for me watching those matches. It was like you guys had gotten over that hump. It was kind of like the American 1982 Dream Team. They beat the Russians in the semifinals, and then they cruised to a victory against the Finns in the finals. And that's the kind of notion that I got, is that you guys had 2 epic 5-setters against Turkish Airlines. And I mean, Turkish Airlines, for those of you who are listening to this and you may not know the roster, that's like Lauren Carlini. Or Karakurt, the girl with always the crazy hair, who's really, really good for Turkey as well. That is a very, very good world-class team. And for you guys to beat them back-to-back in 5-setters like that, I could only imagine that that's absolutely one of the biggest wins of your
Yeah.
career, possibly.
Possibly. I think for pro, probably. Probably some matches in Germany against Stuttgart and stuff. But in terms of like, it wasn't just that it was in 5 sets. It was like the points were long. Like I'm talking like 45-second rallies, and like we were like there was some tense moments. One of my favorites in like the third set or something, one of their outside hitters, an American, actually kept going off my hands, and I pulled, and it was like this perfect like middle pull at the last moment. She shot it like 20 feet out of bounds. There was some looks afterwards. It was great. It was spicy. Loved it. High quality volleyball. So yeah, it's up there for wins for sure.
Can I ask about? I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but Tasu, the 17-year-old on your team, because in game one,
Yeah.
47 points. 47 points in game one. She got 40 kills on 90 attempts.
Yeah.
That's insanity. And then I just have game one stats here. I can go to game two, but game two was like the next day, and she scored like 27.
Yeah, I think 23 kills and then like 4 aces or something like that. Yeah. We basically set her every ball out of system. We're really a speed. Our outsides really like speed. So when you get out of system, it's really, really hard to maintain that tempo. So we tend to just set Allie back in the opposite. She's young, right? She can handle 90 swings. No big deal. She was very tired the second day, which is why she went a little bit down, but still played amazing.
A little bit down here.
A little down. That's
Yeah.
I mean, for her, like a little bit, but she's a fantastic player, and she's so young. She's only 17. So imagine in a couple years. She reminds me of Bella back in the day, who plays on Vakif.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Because I played with Bella as well when she was young in Sweden.
Bella Hawk, right?
Yeah.
You played with Hawkif Bank. That's what we call her on our Discord chat, by the way. Hawkif Bank.
Lol,
Because
that's funny.
she's their team, right? And they set her every ball, but
False. Okay, my good.
okay.
Hey, I love Bella.
Actually, you're right.
Michelle.
But that's
Michelle,
actually what I was
on.
going to say, because part of the reason I think that Busto beat Vakif Bank in the first round is in the first game is because Michelle Barch was not nowhere to be found, but she had a below average game. And
Yeah, Vakif runs such a fast tempo to the outside. It's honestly like it's crazy. Playing against it, it's kind of funny. After the matches, I always laugh, but it really looks like a middle ball, like for the outside tempo. So if they're even a little bit off of their tempo, it's really a 0 or 1 tempo. So if they're off at all, it just doesn't work, right? There's just no wiggle room. So yeah, they in the first match against Busto, they had to set Bella a lot. It became really one-dimensional, so it became easy for Busto to figure out for sure.
So to circle back though, you think Karatasu? How do I say her name? Alexia.
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Okay.
I know I should. I've lived in so many countries. I don't even know how to pronounce English words at this point. I'm all mixed up.
That's fair. I'll get a pronunciation guide at some point. But you think that she is similar to Hawk, which is crazy because you're like Hawk, watching her this Champions League for me has been impressive. Like watching Hawk versus Agonu in the final is going to be something else. Kind of like
it'll be really sick.
The now against the future. So you think this girl could be like her?
Yeah, I think they're really similar. Like they're both really physical, and they've been really physical since they've been 15 or 16. They have similar shot choices. Bella now, I think the reason why Bella has even grown even more is now she's started to work in really high quality tips. And with a lot of outside hitters and opposites, they tend to drop their arm a lot. But Bella's contact point when she tips is so high. And so it's just like a straight down tip. It's impossible to read. So I see Ale doing things like that in practice. I'm like, looks like Bella. And she was that age. So yeah.
Okay.
It looks to me they look similar, but we'll see how Ali turns out.
Do you think it was special for her to be able to win a CEV Cup game in Romania like that?
Yeah, she was really excited, and I wish there was I mean, like 100 people were able to come to that match. I wish more could have come for Ali because that would have been really, really cool. But she knew all the players on Blage or had played against them or whatever, so it was really fun. and her mom got to come to the match and her grandparents and stuff. So that was really cool. And she's so young. So like stuff like that, it matters to everyone, but especially when you're younger, sentimental value is up for sure. So it was special for her.
I've also heard that she is trying to become Serbian. Okay.
No, well, you know what? There's many people who could change their citizenship. You know, a Cuban who's on Fenerbahce has changed her citizenship to Serbian. So I don't necessarily know if Serbia is maybe the right place, but we'll see. It's up to her. I don't have any.
It wouldn't be Serbia then if they've already got a Cuban. I'm pretty sure you can only have like one naturalized player. So this is becoming a weird thing that we have in the volleyball world that is nowhere else, where like players just going to be like, oh, I'm going to change my nationality here. I mean, in the Cuban case, you can definitely understand, but you know,
I feel like the Cuban cases are definitely different. There's an asterisk beside that for very obvious reasons, but yeah, I mean, I feel like it started to happen in the men's game first, like 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh yeah, no, it's been happening for over a decade. It's in terms of, I guess,
I feel like the first like major one was 5 or 6 years ago. It was 5 or 6 years ago on the men's side where I was like, oh, like that's crazy. And it was like, what nationality is he going to be sort of thing versus it's like strange that you could choose, obviously. But yeah, it's definitely becoming a thing. But for some people, it is a legitimate thing. But for others, I'm like, oh, that's strange. But for, their business, whatever.
Interesting.
Go for it.
All right. We'll keep an eye on that. There was rumors back in the day, and I mean, I think that there was wheels set in motion that he didn't get that Robert Landy Simon wanted to come play for Canada, actually, and that he just wasn't able to, like the paperwork and stuff wasn't
make
able
it happen.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's definitely some countries where like you kind of bring it in with like an envelope full of bills and you can be hey, like let's get this person's citizenship for a national team, and it's just like okay, sure. Whereas in Canada that's not going to work,
and I'm sure that definitely does happen. I don't think it would ever happen in a country for Canada, unfortunately. But well, fortunately, you know what, I don't know if I would want that, as a national team player, but
I definitely wouldn't want that.
I'm sure it happened. Yeah, like I don't think that represents the type of program and country that we are, as much as we are a melting pot, but we're not taking bribes or anything like that. So I'm sure it does happen. It is definitely like that weird, it's almost like betting too, right? It's like that dark side of pro volleyball that tends to happen that is, you're not, even more and more prevalent.
You're not into betting?
I mean, I've never got the appeal of it. I've been to Vegas. I don't gamble. I don't know. I made a NCAA bracket. Did I put money down? No, but I enjoyed it just as much, So I don't know. For me, no, but like I know lots of people love to do it, and they make it for a lot of places, Turkey included. It is a source of income that helps the league continue to function. So in that way, sure, it doesn't harm anyone. I support it, but like me personally, no.
That's fair.
But hey, yeah.
It's funny you say that because I actually have a Discord channel for Volleyball Source. So we've got like 100+ people who are in it. We're always just talking about volleyball. We have but some of the guys have started talking about betting recently. And one of the I basically like I got he convinced me, and I went on the site, and it was just like cost like $5 to make an account, and then they gave you a certain sum, and the past like over the like literally like just over the weekend I've like delved into it, and already I've decided that I would never ever bet on a game that I have like an emotional attachment to. So like for example, I would never bet on one of your games because like it just there's no like, because like first I could never bet against you, or I could never bet against a Canadian team or anything like that. But at the same time, like if I'm watching you, I'm already like, okay, like I want her to win. But if I have that doubleness of like I want you to win and I've got money on it, it's
too much.
Yeah.
You know what I think for me, like I went to school in the States, and obviously like there's NCAA rules, compliance, like there's whole rules about that I feel like have been preached into my brain for so long.
But all of that's changing because like sports gambling in the States is becoming legal, and like
yep.
you can bet on NCAA basketball games. Now, And like when I'm talking about betting here, I've bet like $1 and $2. Like I do not
Right, right.
and this
The
is all
amount of money.
and this is all off of like the free money that they gave me from the site. So like
Yeah.
I do not have the budget at all to be like putting real money in. But
And
like
you know what? It brings people to the sport. So like from as I said before, like there are a bunch of people who watch it because it's entertaining for them to bet and to see like what happens and they make money or lose money. Like
oh
that's part of it.
I
So like
100% see the appeal of betting because
yeah,
it adds
absolutely.
that other like
Right.
that other level. So like when I was watching like
Yeah.
Europe like the like CEV Cup matches and stuff like that, like
Hmm.
like yeah, I put a bet on Dynamo Moscow and it was just like oh my like what's gonna happen here, like
Yeah,
it just
totally.
adds a little bit of excitement. It's like at the end it's like oh you won $5. I'm like yeah let's go like sure
Yeah, I
why
did.
not. Um,
It's how they get you in because then you spend those $5. Oh, it's only $5. Like I won this already. Now I'm gonna bet on the next one, and that's how they get you. That's how they
No,
get
I
you.
mean, I would have to actually have money to be able to do that. So, plus, like,
Fair.
plus
Fair.
I have a girlfriend who, we live in a 1 bedroom apartment, and like, if I'm sitting here on the computer, like, she's generally sitting there on the couch. Oop, my laundry is drying behind me is there. So it's like I can't hide anything from her. So it's not like
True.
I'm sitting
True.
there like, it's nice. I have that buffer where she would be like no, but I could definitely see
Yeah, that's good.
why people would do it, and
Hmm.
I wouldn't. I've definitely I've noticed a huge rise in like sports media towards betting, so that might be another avenue
Mm.
that I look in towards to just to talk about.
It's always been, especially for like English football, Bundesliga, like there's always been
Huge
advertisements for Bet 365 or whatever. You could always see it on TV.
in
But I feel
Europe.
like
It's way bigger, right? In Europe, there's
yeah,
like
it's
literally
very
like
different.
kiosks that you can like walk into in
Yeah,
Germany and just like place your bets and stuff like that.
totally. It's only recently that in the North American market has it started to become more mainstream and not something like under the table, Like I
Hmm.
feel like sports betting or any betting of that type, you think it's kind of shoddy, but now I think in North America it's become a lot more commonplace and a lot more on the up and up,
Yeah.
as
So
they would say.
basically, right now, it's going through the process where like it's like like legal marijuana and sports betting are like the two things that like
Oh gosh.
states are picking up right now. That's
Yeah.
that's that's how North American society is going at the
Yeah.
moment. We're gonna fund our
That's the
education
trend.
and healthcare with betting and weed.
Oh God. I have no comment to that one. Oh gosh. No comment.
All right, well, let's kind of change tunes here. Look a little bit more towards the future, I guess. You've been one of the, if not the longest standing member of the women's national team now for a while. I mean, I remember doing interviews
A
with
while.
you back in like what 2013, and you were a member of the team.
Yeah, I technically started with the senior team. I actually looked at it today. I was on national team website, 2011 apparently, which is 10 years ago. But I was with the junior team and beach programs before that. But like with senior team, 2011, and then I didn't start traveling on rosters until 2012, 2014, because I was still in college at that point. So I was
That's true. Yeah, yeah.
coming and going. Yeah, so for a lot of the NCAA people, it's we've talked about this before, but difficult, but not impossible to play on the national team while you're still in college.
Hmm.
Um, so I took years off or only did half summers and stuff like that for my first couple of years.
Yeah, that.
So yeah.
So, but now you guys are heading into what could be characterized as maybe one of the biggest years that this program has had in a long time. You guys are going to be a part of
Mhm.
the Nations League. Won't Unfortunately won't be going to the Olympics, but you're going to be a part of the Nations League, and it's really like kind of the start of a new era as well.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, Tom Black couldn't be a part of the team based off of everything that's going on now, but I've never been so hopeful about the women's national team program as I am right now.
Yeah.
Watching the level of women's, like Canadian women's volleyball in the pro scene this year has been absolutely insane. right?
Yeah.
Obviously, like you've been having a great year. Maglio's been having a fantastic year as well in Turkey. Kira and
Mm-hmm.
Alexa are setting records in two of the best leagues in the world in Italy and
Mm-hmm.
Poland. Kira's been doing incredible things. Like
Yeah.
you've even got like Kelsey Veltman, who isn't a national team member, but she's still within the program. She led the German
Mm-hmm.
league in blocking. Danielle Briesbois,
Mm-hmm.
former national team, like led the German league in scoring. Like
Yeah.
women's volleyball in Canada, like the women are absolutely killing it this season, and it makes me excited for what's going to happen this spring.
I hope other people are paying attention to whatever it is saying because yes, like I feel like this year we've had such a great year overall, like across the board. Ever and I have talked about this before, but in general, the women are playing in such higher quality leagues as a program overall than I think we ever have been. We've obviously had players who have played in fantastic leagues or on really good teams individually, but as a program across the board, I think this is the best season bar none of just quality and whether that's in Europe or you had Shy on the podcast who she won the V Cup this past
Mm-hmm.
weekend. Just really really great results, really high quality leagues. Bree King just finished up at Athletes
It
Unlimited,
got
which is
third and was
huge.
hands down the best setter, and like
Yes, yeah.
that to me is the biggest thing, and that I definitely agree that in the
Hmm.
past we've had good players on good teams, but we haven't had as many players be a key piece or the centerpiece of that team
Yeah,
the way we've seen it with
right.
this year, or the way that we talked a little bit about that Busto game. Like Alexa
Hmm.
was the MVP of that Busto game, that
Yeah, she
Busto Vaca
was.
Bank the game that she won. And I mean, at first I was like, oh, I thought Mingardi played a little bit better, but when you go back and look at the fact that Alexa passed almost every single ball and went a perfect
Yeah.
7 for 7 in set number 3, which they had to win, like she's been
Hmm.
killing it. Same thing with Kira, like how like we're seeing, like especially like some of our younger women really step up and be centerpieces of these big teams. Like that to me
Yeah.
is really excited about what that's going to look like when everything comes back together.
Yeah. And it's crazy. Like we have not as a program seen each other since the qualifier, which I know for everyone feels like a lifetime ago, at least for me and the other girls. It feels so long ago that we were together. Obviously, we didn't do anything last summer because of COVID. We thought at one point we could train, but as things developed, it just didn't make sense. Um, so we actually haven't played all in a gym together as like a full program, and like it'll be almost 2 years, right? We had a limited roster size when we went to the Olympic qualifier. Um, so yeah, it's really exciting to think what it all will be like when we're actually all in one place.
Now, I do want to talk about the coaching changes. We talked about Marcello
Mhm.
a little bit before. Obviously, we mentioned Tom Black. Now, just to touch on him, it is definitely unfortunate that he couldn't come, but I also
Yeah,
feel at the same time that he also instilled so much good stuff that you guys are able to kind
yeah,
of take along. Is that accurate?
yeah, for sure. I think every single person involved in the program while Tom was the head coach couldn't say enough good things about him. We loved Tom. We loved his family. We loved, training at Georgia when we got the opportunity. Tom is such a great person and a fantastic coach and someone who is obsessed with learning and getting better. And so when you have someone like that leading your program, like only good things are going to happen, right? Like he talked about, getting 2% better every day. And we really explored every area of where we could get a little bit better. And I think that really had an impact on the program as a whole and on individuals. Just, you know, we would spend practices and practices focusing on specific things with serving or specific things with blocking with Benjo. And like we got really, really down to details. And I think it opened up our eyes about where we can steal 1 or 2 points. And I think that's been a misconception with our team internally and externally that, we're so far away from where we should be or could be. That's not actually true. It's like,
I agree with that fully.
yeah. And so you're talking about a 4 or 5 point spread. And where do you gain those 5 points? Well, okay, if we are serving aggressively in 6 rotations, like that is a huge advantage. Okay, so how do we do that? How do we have 6 rotations where we're serving that it is a threat every time? Like that sort of mentality Tom was all about. And I think that mentally has made a really big difference for the program.
That's fantastic. It was such a different change being around that program, being around the women's team when Tom was around, with your guys'
Yeah.
with the demeanor and stuff. And I still remember watching your guys' what was it, like the Challenger Cup? What was the one that you guys did in Chile? The one that you qualified for VNL. I forget what was that called. But like watching you guys,
Oh, yeah.
sorry,
The
Peru.
whatever it was called
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Peru. Yeah.
The you know, and watching you guys through that process was so it was eye opening, and it was just like you
Yeah.
guys were executing at such a high level. Obviously, like, I think that like there was such a big potential for that game to go off the rails too, with the Autumn's injury.
Oh,
And
huge.
how
Yeah.
everything went to crap, and then you guys win it in
Yeah.
5. And that, to me, like watching that, it was just kind of like, this is the team like that we could have, and this is a very good team. This is a very good team that I think like people want to play for. And I think that might be one of the biggest things, because I think with you've been on the team for so long, how many athletes have we seen just kind of like come to the program and leave because they might not necessarily want to play for the team?
Yeah, and there's so many things that go into that though. Like I agree with you that like Tom definitely brought an energy, and that like that group of women are really special for a bunch of reasons. What we went through, the transition between Marcello and Tom was it was easy,
Drastic.
and also yeah, it's just as I said before, like they have very, very opposing coaching styles. So as a program, it's not super easy to switch like that, and expectations are different. And so that team, the group of girls that were on that team went through so much emotion. And I feel like we say that in every interview, but like it really is true. Like that group of people I will always be connected to because of all the stuff that went down and happened. Went through Autumn's injury, and that stuff cannot be undervalued as to why the culture is shifting and has changed. And yeah, I definitely think the women's program now is seen differently internally and externally. Would I like the external view to change even more? Totally. But like we're responsible for that, right? Like the more games we win, the more people will pay attention. So that's on us as well. But yeah, I'm so excited for the future of the program while I'm involved, and like the future, I think I've never past my generation. I've never been more excited for.
That's fantastic. Now, you are going to be the longest standing member, or one of the longest standing members, you and Kyla, on the team. Does your role, how does your role change now? Because you just spent a year, and we talked a little bit about how young your team this year is in Yeselyurt. Does that, are you able to kind of like bring that along, and you feel now sort of even more like after that, now that you've changed from Coach Black to now Shannon Windsor, who we're going to talk about in a second as well, but do you feel kind of your role is changing more and more as you're becoming like almost like the matriarch of the team, and like the one of the big leaders?
Yeah, yes and no. I think since even during Marcello's era, I think we did a better job than we had in the past of bringing young people into the program. And as you said, like making it as enjoyable as possible. And sometimes playing for the national team or playing professionally is not all fun and games. It doesn't, there's a lot that goes on, and it's a grind, and it's really difficult. And so I think we did a much better job of bringing younger players into the program and trying to make the transition as easy as we possibly could. So I think that's something going forward. Obviously there will be some retirements that will be announced soon. And so we're going to actually have this influx of really, really young athletes.
Which I'm really excited for. The young kids coming. If like,
exactly.
if like I was excited about like the young kids who are already like older now, but the next group of young kids, holy crap, watch out. It is going to be fun.
Exactly. And like there's so much talent in Canada now, and I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, but we have so much talent coming out the pipeline from NCAA, from Canada, from younger athletes who are now ready to transition onto the senior team full time. Like I think for the older athletes, it's so important to try to make the transition as easy as possible. and especially in a tournament like VNL. So we're getting thrown. VNL we start training camp in the middle or beginning of May, and then start VNL. The bubble starts the end of May. And what a crazy tournament to start. Some people will be starting their national team careers at VNL in this like crazy bubble. Like it is our version of the Olympics, right? Unfortunately, we didn't qualify for the Olympics, but this is our version, right? Like this is the tournament other than NCAA Championship, so it isn't until October, but it's the best competition we're going to get this summer against the top countries. So I think for the younger athletes, like what a cool experience, right? Like getting to play USA, China, Germany, Turkey, like all these like really, really high class teams. Like how freaking cool is that? It's so exciting.
I absolutely like the fact that like usually your first tournament of the year would be like the Pan Am Cup. Or like something NORCECA with
which
that.
Is the
like,
worst tournament.
Which is the worst tournament. You're going to play a million games in a terrible gym in like, it's somewhere in the NORCECA region because it's never Canada, the US. And it's gonna beat you down. So I definitely agree. Like this is gonna be fun. Is there like, who are some of these young players that you're alluding to that like we are going to be excited for? Like obviously there's Andrea, who we've seen recently. Who just finished at Arizona State.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
she's playing in Romania.
Yes, actually I did know that.
So I actually got to see her. She came and saw me when we played the Blage match for CEV Cup. Yeah, so that was really nice.
Sweet. So she brought the COVID.
Yeah. Pardon?
She brought the COVID.
She broke COVID?
Yeah, she brought the COVID to your team. I'm joking.
I don't know. I think it was the next match, but who knows? Maybe this is all Dre's fault. I'll call her and tell her after.
All right.
It's all her fault.
All right, sounds good. But yeah, because who are some of the younger like girls in the program that we can kind of maybe potentially see this year?
Well, I won't name names because the roster will be announced soon.
Oh, come on.
I know, but we have a lot of the athletes that were part of the Next Gen program who will be involved with the senior team. So those athletes have been around the program, but not specifically traveling or like involved in their senior team at all. So it's kind of great because we kind of know each other. So it's not like we're starting off from nothing, but there's a lot to learn. We have some players coming from the NCAA, which are really exciting. Super young athletes, like
girls who are potentially on the junior national team previously.
Potentially, ooh. Yes. There's gonna be a whole new crop of young women on the team. That's all I'll say. So we're really excited.
It's to me like almost as intense as the bubble will be. It almost sounds like it might be a perfect scenario to kind of like start cooking that stew, because like when I remember watching the NBA bubble and all these NBA players are coming back and be like, yo, it's kind of like an AAU tournament, and it sounds a lot like you guys are gonna have a lot of time. You're gonna be able to spend a lot of time together, and you're gonna and there's not gonna be any outside distractions whatsoever. And it for me it sounds like almost like a perfect cookout situation where you guys can kind of just figure things out, go up against the world's best, where you're also going to be like fully supported, not in like Guatemala or Mexico or somewhere, without any distractions. Like to me, like this is almost best case, obviously not best case scenario. There's a lot of better cases where you're like competing for medals and stuff, but for where your team is at, it might be the perfect starting point.
Yeah, like in terms of like establishing culture and creating like a team family atmosphere, that's always been vital for our program. Like it's basically like a 8-week long preseason, like this is as close as we're possibly going to be for, those 8 weeks with training camp beforehand. So yeah, like it's just like a crash course on like, this is what international volleyball is like, it won't always be like this. Ideally, VNL would have happened in the 5 different countries and we would have been traveling and stuff, but yeah, what an intense preseason of national team for sure.
Well, that's going to be great. I can't wait to watch that. It's going to be awesome. Now we talked about Tom Black. Now you guys have a new coach, a new head coach, Shannon Windsor. She was with the program before. She coached the Next Gen. She's going to be the first female head coach of the women's national team, which I think is very exciting. I think is great. What are your kind of initial impressions? I'm just asking people because I've never spoken to Shannon.
Yeah, you haven't spoken to her.
I don't know her. Like, not even like a hi, how are you in the hallway type thing. Like, I've never been introduced to her, so I have no notion of who she is and how she is as a coach. So I'm just kind of like, well, what are your thoughts and your impressions? Like, lay it on me here.
Love Shannon. She is a no BS, honest, aggressive yet demanding, but also praises her athletes really well. She's a mom of 3 kids. She has a lot of she was a coach of Australia for 3.5, 4 years, and
was she their head coach?
She was their head coach. Yep.
Okay.
And actually, the assistant Lauren, I believe, coached with her in Australia, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that is true. So that's how they knew each other as well. So yeah, like she wears a tight little bun on her head. She's super honest, aggressive, like feisty. I think it's amazing that it's a woman. We've been talking, through Tom's time as head coach and Marcello's time as head coach. We've never actually had a full-time female coach.
Like even assistant.
No, I mean, Shannon was involved in the program, but it was...
Yeah, she wasn't on the bench or anything with you guys.
No, she was for
that one tournament, like the development tournament
in Colorado,
yeah.
And she did help. Like, she was in the gym, but it was this thing where like she had to balance between being the head coach of Next Gen and running their practices, and also like she did a lot of running back and forth between courts, right, trying to absorb as much as she could from Tom, but then also being in charge of the Next Gen court. So she did a lot of running back and forth. But yeah, we've never had a full-time coach. We've had support staff that have been female, but we've never had a full-time female coach, which like it's 2021, like of course we should have had that. So that's amazing. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for her and I love it. Yeah, I'm super excited, and I think the staff that she's hired as well will complement each other and us really well. I think there's a really good mix. Like Vincenzo, he is super knowledgeable. He coaches at U of T, so he's, more aware of the Canadian system, but also is Italian and like super dialed into Europe. And he's actually in Italy right now getting things set up. Our stats guy is from Spain and he's coached a bunch of places. And then our other assistant, she's actually a pro coach in Switzerland and has been in the past. So like, we got a lot of great different viewpoints and experiences to work off of, which I think is fantastic.
That sounds like I know Vincenzo fairly well. And I
love Vinny.
Yeah, and he's a guy who's come in and done great things for that U of T program. And you're right,
yeah.
he has a foot in either world. He comes from that Italian background that's very professional, and like he's one of the best data volley people.
Absolutely.
He's so technically knowledgeable.
He's dialed in with
but at the same time he intricately understands the Canadian system and the way that things, because he's been at U of T now for like almost like 5+ years, I think. Like he's been around.
Maybe even more now. A long time.
Actually, definitely, because I was commenting games.
Because when did they win their national championship? 2017. I don't even know. What is time these days?
Dude, I don't even know. Yeah, it's crazy.
Because he had been there for a couple years before they won the championship, I thought.
In 2014, that was when they hosted. No, I don't even know anymore.
I don't think they won the hosted.
No,
that's Anna just posted about it too on Instagram a couple days ago. Oh, darn. I wish I could remember.
But
he's been there for a while.
But he's been there for
a while.
Just to say that, like, he understands, and I think maybe one of the biggest disconnects with Marcello was that he just didn't understand Canadian volleyball and understand, like, the sport culture that we had here, and how we proceed through it. So I think that having a guy like Vincenzo there, who's so incredibly knowledgeable, but at the same time understands the reality of how it happens in Canada is massive.
Yeah, for sure. And even with Tom so much, there is a very stark difference between the NCAA and U Sport. Are they still calling it U Sport these days?
Yeah,
Is
it's
it
still
still
U
U Sport?
Sports. Yeah, who
U
knows?
Sport.
I mean, they're not going to
So
change it. It's U Sport, but you can call
they're
it
not going to
CIS
change
too.
it.
Everyone or
Yeah.
CIAU if you're real old.
Oh gosh. Yeah, so there is a difference between those programs too. And obviously like even the way Sport Canada functions and Volleyball Canada functions, like having someone who's already dialed into that world, but also has that of like, okay, this is what we do in Europe and who can bridge that gap is I think an amazing thing that Vinny will be able to do for the program.
Yeah, I think that's great as well. I'm as I've said, I'm really excited about what's to come with the women's national team. It very much feels like the men's national team a decade ago. You know, the men's national team back in 2000.
I feel like that's what you said. Like I feel like that's what you said 4 years ago.
No, this is what I said. This is what I said in 2019.
Okay.
Right. And
yeah.
so I'm just,
fair enough.
You know, like if it wasn't for coronavirus, you know, like that would have been, we would have been having this conversation last year. Right. So,
and you know what, if Autumn maybe didn't get hurt and some, you know, other things happened differently, who knows, man, who knows?
I know that's like a tough subject to talk about because we can talk about that because I agree. Like there was a world, and I know because we've had this discussion before, but like if Autumn doesn't get injured, what happens at the Olympic qualifiers in like the first round of ones, and then what happens again in January? Because
and it's not, I want to make it super clear, like it's Autumn's injury was, I feel like we also talk about this every interview. Autumn's injury was devastating for many reasons. Firstly, because of the athlete of Autumn. Like she's just a fantastic person who works so hard, and like the way it happened and the drama of the situation and it being in Peru was just terrible. Like I cannot make that clear enough. But also in terms of like us as a team, the way our offense and our passing drastically had to change. And we had been firing at this like perfect, like tempo was going great. Our balance was good. And then we just had to like shift. We basically had to restart all the stuff we had done in terms of distribution and like passing seams, you know, down to the minimum halfway through, like 2 weeks before our Olympic qualifier, you know? So it's not obviously that to Autumn, it's like the worst thing ever, but for like our program, it's, you know, it was difficult to rebound from for a variety of reasons. Yeah. So who knows what would have happened.
What made it even worse too is that you guys had to stay in Peru after that and play a Pan Am Cup.
Yeah, that was just, I don't know who planned that one.
Like,
but
you know, at that point, it just almost to me, and like you guys had been on the road for a while because you had already played that. Like that was your third tournament of the summer already. Like, it almost seemed like everything was going so great, and then that happened autumn, and then there was just too much overload after that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because of the NCAA and Tom's commitments, we didn't have the time in October to like really prep because we had our NCAA championships in October in Puerto Rico. But we obviously had a different coaching staff that we knew and really liked, but it's still different, right? So every coach wants to run a different system. So we didn't really get that time to really figure things out. And then when the qualifier happened, you know, we're all coming back from pro. So we're all working off these different systems. We're halfway through a pro season. So like some people, you know, Jessie, our libero at the time, was having terrible issues with her back. She could like barely walk during the qualifier. You know, I was going through family stuff. Like I don't even remember the qualifier. Like there was so many different things. So we didn't ever really have a bulk of time to really reset and figure out those details with the new I say new team, but with like the new situation of the team, a new distribution. Like we became a lot more one-dimensional when Autumn went down, unfortunately. So that made it a lot more difficult just to score balls, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It was heavy, but I mean,
that's sports though. Like that's what happens. Like this stuff happens. Like, of course, if we could go back, we would do things differently. We would not let Autumn turn to get that ball on defense from pipe, you know, but like like that's just life. That's sports. Like shit goes down, shit happens. Like
Do
it
you
is what it
do
is.
you think ultimately that makes you guys stronger moving forward?
I mean, yeah, it absolutely has to. It definitely didn't make us weaker. Like I can't speak for Autumn. Autumn's rehab has been super difficult and she's been grinding it out in Vancouver, sometimes all by herself with
Hmm.
just the coaching staff. Like Autumn deserves so much credit for just keeping going and trying to figure out what's going on and working so hard that lots of people don't see. But as a program too, like we, as I said before, like that group of people are so close for so many reasons, but that's one of them is that we went through something really, really difficult on the road in Peru, like in the middle of tournaments. It was not great. Um, but as a unit and as a program, I think it established a lot of things that are key to our culture as a program that will continue past the group of people who were in that or during that experience, right? Like that will continue in the culture that we've established.
How much do you think is that like part of your role now is establishing that culture and making sure that the younger generation understands?
That's the great thing is that I don't think we need to spend time establishing it. It's just continuing it, which is different from what we've had to do in the past. Before it was trying to figure out who are we, what do we stand for, what type of people do we want to be, what type of program are we going to be, versus now I feel like my job's almost easier. We just continue what we're doing and keep pushing the envelope and keeping each other accountable. I feel like our culture is the best it's ever been. So
Right.
for me, I just we just get to continue the work that everyone else we've already put in the work or part of the work, you know? So now we just got to keep it going and making sure, as we talked about before, like making sure those athletes who are coming into the program know the expectations. This is what we're about. This is what we do. We work hard. We're not afraid to work hard. We don't care what other people say. We do our jobs, like that type of idea. So for me, I almost think it's easier. The hard part of establishing it is already partially done.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That honestly, like you're sitting here and talking about it, and it's giving me chills because like I've and we've talked. We've been friends for a long time. We've talked a lot about this team, and I've
Yeah.
never heard you speak so like positively and so like it sounds like you're excited, and that's getting me
I
excited.
am. Yeah, I am super excited. Like, I think one thing that this program really needs is stability. And we just haven't been able to have that for a variety of reasons. We moved to Vancouver, and when you move locations, there's a lot of things that need to be worked out that can't be worked out until you're actually there. And that's mostly on the support side, physio, nutrition, all that stuff. It just needs to be worked out. And then we've gone through two coaching changes, but now like I really feel like we have so much more support internally, externally. We know we are who we are as a program, and Shannon's only going to continue that work in the right direction. So I feel like our base is so solid. When a couple years ago, I feel like we were still like trying to figure out who we are. I don't feel like that anymore. I feel like we know who we are, and the work that Shannon is going to do for our program is only going to lead us in the right direction. So I feel super optimistic and positive about where we're going.
So then, like, can I ask you, like, where are we going? Like, what, like, not necessarily off the court because I think that's maybe a little bit more personal with how you guys
Yeah.
interact with each other. But on the court, what is that product going to look like? I think we've definitely seen that specifically with the men's team where they've really developed their own style of what Canadian men's volleyball looks like
Yeah.
in terms of they kind of blend everything together and they're very reliant on making the right decisions and making good decisions in that way. So kind of where do you think the strengths like lie on the women's team?
I think we offensively are going to be running such a fast, multi optional offense. Like I think about who we have in terms of firepower, not just who's on the team now, but once again, the younger athletes coming up. Like we got some options, which
Yeah.
is, like you have Alexa and Kier running on opposing pins.
That in
That
itself,
by itself,
that's
it's crazy, right?
I can't remember in my time covering the women's national team, I can't remember a time where we've had two exceptional opposing players like that, like one on the right side. Like we've obviously had great right side players in the past, like Tabby Love, of course Sarah Pavan, but there's been nothing like this where you've got Alexa on the left and you've got Kira on the right, and then Maglio and yourself have both had pretty damn good years in Turkey as well.
Yeah, like Maglio and I have had a great year. So like offensively, I think I hope we become a team and will become a team that, like, if you try to shut down one of us, that's totally fine, because we have 3 or 4 other options just as effective, ready to go. So I think that's going to be a strength. I think we've also always been a really good blocking team. I feel like that's something that's underrated for us. I feel like we're going to be a strong blocking team. And one thing that from Tom's era that I think we're going to be a really aggressive serving team. That's something we spent a lot of time on before with Tom that I think will carry over a lot.
I like that. I like
so
that a
those,
lot.
Yeah, I think that I want us to be an aggressive team, an aggressive offensive team, taking big swings, getting huge blocks, like taking things from opponents, versus I think in the past we've been maybe too passive in our play. So I think being aggressive is the way to go for us.
I definitely agree with that. It sometimes seemed like we were waiting for other teams to make the errors. Like we were very good at kind of keeping the ball alive and keeping it going, but we just weren't forcing them to take the errors. And that was definitely like watching that Challenger Cup where for you guys to qualify for Nations League. That was the biggest difference I saw in that team, where that you guys started dictating the pace of play instead of letting the other teams dictate it, or like kind of being in that middle ground. It was like, we're going to play this style and you're going to have to try to keep up with us. And that's exciting. Now, one of the biggest, I don't want to say holes, but one of the biggest areas of work that the team has always lacked stability in, as if we want to go back to that, has been the setting position. Now, Bree is still pretty young, still somewhat new to this team, but is she like now like the starting setter? Because after what she's done in the Athletes Unlimited League, like I was very curious to see how she was going to do in that league. Coming from youth sports, she's only played the 1 year in Dresdner, spent time with the women's national team. I was very interested to see how she stacked up, and I could not be like more pleasantly surprised by how she not only like was very good, but absolutely thrived in that scenario.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not Shannon. I don't make starting setter decisions. So, I mean, no, really, like we have a bunch of experienced setters. Danny Smith has played a long time and knows these girls really well. Kim Robitaille has also played a long time and played pro internationally. So you know what? The best thing for our program is to be as competitive in our own gym as possible. It's just the truth.
Okay. Yeah,
really. And
you went with a political answer. I respect it, but you're also right. But I don't even think you're also right. I don't
think it's even political. I really don't think it's even political. I really believe that if you have 18 athletes who are pushing each other to be the starters and to be as good as they possibly can be, that can only result in raising the level in the gym. And like, especially especially as a national team for Canada specifically, it's really, really hard to get exhibition matches outside of our scheduled tournaments because it geographically is really difficult and expensive to play other teams. So you think about like quality training 6-on-6 play in practice, it's vital that like we do not have a really big difference between who starts and who doesn't. And also going into VNL, we will have to rest starters. I use starters loosely. We will have to rest people. It will be impossible for the same 12 athletes, 14 athletes to play every single game. It is physically, mentally, emotionally probably not possible. And I expect a lot of teams to rotate. VNL also is an 18-person extended roster. So I expect us to be rotating rosters on not a game daily basis, but almost. I really believe that that will be the case, and that will be the way a lot of national teams go about it, because to play as many games as we're going to in the time frame in the bubble situation, it's just not possible to play every single match. It's impossible.
Do you like, obviously you haven't been in contact with the national team all that much. I'm sure you've gotten like a few texts in here that, but like you guys haven't had your team briefing about Nations League, but do you think that you guys are going to have like a goal of being like, we want to place here, or is it going to be more of like a game per game goal of like things that you're going to be working on?
We haven't talked about it, but for me, I think the goal is to stay in VNL next year. So like
That's
that looks
goal.
like, solid goal. And you know what? It's not going to be very easy. Like, it's just the facts that when you're looking about, okay, how many wins do we have to get in VNL? Where are we going to get them? I think that will be the overarching goal, is to stay in VNL for next year. We'll obviously have specific goals, and a lot of that stuff will be established when we actually like get together as a group. Like, it's such a strange thing right now. Like, we haven't seen each other in so long, new coaching staff, and that's why we're doing our training camp in Italy before the bubble starts, and that time will be so critical because we got lots to do and not very much time to do it. So are you looking at VNL games?
Not games. I'm looking at the teams. I'm looking at teams. So on the women's side, we've got alphabetically, of course, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, China, Dominican Republic, Germany, Italy, Japan, Korea, the Netherlands, Poland, Russia, Serbia, Thailand, Turkey, and the USA. How many teams get relegated? 2? 1?
One.
Okay.
I believe it used to be 1, but with COVID, everything, who knows?
So
I believe 1.
There's like, I definitely think that is an attainable goal. Looking at the teams,
it is attainable,
at the teams there.
Yeah, it is, but it also depends. There's so much. It depends on like who do, like the teams who are in the Olympics, who do they send to VNL? How do they manage like player load? Like, I was talking to someone yesterday involved in the USA program, and does Karch use it as an opportunity to establish his starting lineup for the Olympics, or does he use it to test athletes who are on the bubble, who he doesn't know who he's taking to the Olympics? Like, there's, and for each program, that's USA specifically, obviously, but for each program, there's going to be a different scenario going on. Some are using it like they're not in the Olympics. Okay, so this is our tournament. Others are in the Olympics, so that changes things. Other people, their roster has been the same for the last 10 years. So like, it doesn't make a difference. Right. Mm-hmm. So like, each program will have different goals. So like, it will be interesting to see who we can beat. Like, what games can we steal? What games must we win? And we won't know. That's the funny thing about VNL, because everyone plays everyone, and the schedule is uneven in terms of everyone's playing everyone at different times. So like, you could have a earlier or easier section in the middle or whatever, so like, we're going to have to try to win as many games as we possibly can. So it's gonna be fun.
I'm excited. Like, May is gonna be a great month. There's gonna be so much good volleyball on in May, and I can't wait for it.
Yeah. Like, I was actually gonna ask you, I was looking at the beach points today. Mm-hmm. Can you explain to me and everyone who's listening?
Mm-hmm.
So I saw that Alex and Ross said that they qualified. Like, how does that?
Because basically,
how is that happening?
Basically,
can you explain?
Mathematically, they are qualified. Like, they have,
because they're at the top, right? They're technically 1 in world rankings, but Sarah and Melissa qualified because they won worlds.
They're 1,
right?
Yeah, Sarah and Mel have qualified because they won worlds. They are. Right. I think they're number 1 in the Olympic provisional rankings, but Mel and Sarah are still ranked number 1 in the world. Because there's 3 different ranking systems. There's the world rankings. There's the entry point rankings, which is where it determines where you're ranked in any given weekend, and that fluctuates quite a bit. And then there's the Olympic provisional rankings. And so like the Olympic provisional rankings, it's like takes like your 12 best results type stuff.
Okay.
Right?
So that's why it's different than the FIVB results
right?
Ranking.
Exactly.
Because it takes the top 12 of your personal. Got it.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Whereas the FIVB rankings, I think it takes the bulk of it, and adds everything together. And then like as you get further and further away from events, like those like stop to lose meaning. Whereas
Right.
like
Yes,
this,
exactly.
it's, you know, it's more so. So that's why Alex and April are technically. Actually, there's a really good. It's called the Beach Volleyball blog. Go check it out. The guy is now part of my Discord, and actually he just posted yesterday. Basically, he thinks it's going to be like 6,800 points is going to be the magic number to be able to qualify. So for like Brandy and Heather, for example, they're like right on that cusp, right?
Right. I checked today and they were tied for sixth, but that's like there was a bunch of people tied ahead of them. I would have had to count. But also, is it like I saw some that had an asterisk beside it for like country quota? So is each country
max two per country,
two per country, and each country is dictating who's going based on
points.
Each federation's points.
Yeah, each federation.
But I saw that there was a bunch of American teams that were high in the rankings and like would technically qualify, and that's who had an asterisk, and it was like country quota, whatever, like too many teams, right? I was just seeing what beach volleyball I would be able to watch in the next 2 or 3 months.
April is going to be great because April they have the Cancun bubble.
Oh, fantastic!
So like all of April, you're going to be able to watch beach volleyball. All of May, you're going to be able to watch indoor volleyball, and then we're in summertime, and coronavirus is going to be gone. We're going to be able to go outside. So like,
oh, perfect,
ladies and gentlemen, like we are golden here. It's going to be a grand old time.
I had so much fun watching the beach event. Like it was in Qatar or whatever. It was so fun to watch
and
beach volleyball.
Amazing.
It was great.
How great was it that the FIVB had every single match was streamed? It was so simple. It was just streamed baseline and camera angle, like to get rid of this sideline bullshit. Baseline camera angle. I know we disagree about the whole sideline thing. I know. Come on, I will break it down for you one day. And show you.
You have before, and I'm pretty sure we're just gonna have the same argument we have every time.
You were like one of the few people I know that disagrees with me on this. However, regardless,
I know.
But it was great that you were able to watch all of it, and like because that was like one of the only places that you could watch it. This chat was amazing. Like there's so many beach legends that were in the chat. Like the McKibben bros were going off, and it was great. And I really hope that the FIVB continues with that because it's just the idea of having this, like the fact that like VNL is going to be behind a paywall on Volleyball World TV, like it just kind of sucks.
Is it? I didn't know. I haven't looked into it yet.
I'm pretty sure it is.
I'm pretty sure it was last VNL, not last summer, but the year before. It was. The
FIVB is.
I'm pretty sure you had to pay. Yeah.
So
I think you did.
I mean, it's. And like here's the reality of it. Like I don't mind paying, right? And I don't mind that they require us to pay. However, I do think that it's a lack of an opportunity within the volleyball crowd is not we're not a pay-per-view crowd. You know, we're not a boxing or like I'm gonna spend money to buy this. It's like someone who I know from the Ontario volleyball community very well. I posted about Alexa's playoff game, and he goes, "What's the link?" And I was like, "Oh, it's this, but you're gonna have to pay for it." And he goes, "Oh, well, like that's how they get you." And when he first said that, I kind of thought he was gonna be like, he's the type of guy who'd be like, "Okay, yeah, no problem. Like, how much is it? Like, I kind of want to watch." And he was just kind of like, no, whereas like when it's available for like that for free and for everyone to see on a platform like YouTube that literally everyone has access to, it just grows the game so much more, in my opinion.
Don't you? I feel like though the paywall stuff is way more on the indoor side than it is for beach. Don't you think?
It was both, yeah, because it was like the beach stream that it was on the beach side. There is a little.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking in general, like the AVP stuff. I guess if you have Amazon Prime, but like everyone has Amazon Prime, so technically that's behind a paywall. But I feel like that's people view Amazon Prime and the AVP, which I love what the AVP stuff has done in the last 3 or 4 years with having so many tournaments on Amazon. But people view that like paywall a lot differently than they would view, for example, buying a Eurovolley TV pass, which is €499 a month. Even though,
I mean, for me, to that, it's still the same thing because you still like, it's not like when you turn on Amazon Prime, there's like a promo for like AVP Beach Volleyball when you open it. Like the only way for you to find, and it's not like Amazon
Is if you know what's going on.
is if you know what's going on and you physically
that's
search
true.
it, right? So for me, it's just kind of like Amazon doesn't promote you on any of their feeds or anything like that. Like they don't push you, like even to someone like me, and like I know Steve Bezos is grabbing all of my information. I know he knows I like volleyball. So why aren't you recommending it to me? Why isn't it is it not in the feed? So that to me is, but I mean it's
something that AU Pro Volley did, and that almost all of their matches were, not all, because some of them were broadcasted on USA TV, but a majority, I would say, were streamed on Twitch, on YouTube, and linked on Twitter and Facebook. And I think that an accessibility, it has been a factor for American leagues in the past, and they kind of eliminated that issue. Like it was streamed everywhere.
You know what? I think that's one of the things that the AU League did very, very well. And I loved the fact that when it was streamed on Twitch, it was in a Twitch type stream. Like it had a bit of more of a chat. Like there was people, they had people there discussing it. And like, to me, that was great. Do you want to jump into this can of worms here?
Let's do it.
Because
do it. Jump in.
What just happened? Whoa.
Oh gosh.
Sorry, my iTunes just turned on somehow. And
you still have iTunes? Come on now.
Like I don't actually have iTunes. Like it's just like on my computer because I'm using a Mac, right?
Okay. Fair enough.
It's not like I actively use it. I'm a Spotify guy. Like who?
Spotify always.
Back in the day, I had an immaculate iTunes. I would go.
Oh, you were one of those people?
Oh yeah.
Of course.
Like I would.
Of course you were.
I would like make sure, like if I was downloading it, I was making sure I had like the album artwork and I had like all of the information good to go. Because I had like one of those. I had like one of those like 160 gigabyte iPods, and like that was like my Bible, But then Spotify came along, and then it's just like, okay, well, this is just too easy.
Whoever uses Apple Music still know, like Spotify playlist. What did we ever do? I don't think I could function without Spotify.
If you're watching this right now on YouTube, you can go listen to it on Spotify right now. So this is for the listeners. I mean, I'm not talking. I'm not talking to you personally because we're not doing this live.
Yeah.
But yeah. So let's talk about the AU Pro League. Because it first of all, it just wrapped up.
Deep breaths from you. Gosh, well, already.
As I've mentioned my Discord chat a few times, and we've had some spicy conversations about this AU Pro League, because like, it's. I mean, first of all, it just wrapped up.
Tell me your qualms with it.
The format. The format of
the point system or the 3 matches or the draft situation, like the team formulation
the
issue.
Point system and the team formulation issue. The point system was.
So you have issues with both.
both okay. Like the fact that you like to be perfectly honest, I lost interest after like week 2, right? And I'm someone who loves volleyball. It just it like I still watched it, but it was very much of like for first 2 weeks, like my girlfriend and I were sitting down and like like I was posting the games, so like we knew when they were gonna be, and we were watching it. Whereas like as it moved on, it was like we're gonna be playing a game of crib, we're gonna be on our phones, like watch, like it's on, but it's like background noise, and it was so hard to create any continuity with the teams as they're always like moving around. But then
that was one thing I found. I run the national team social media, and so I would always have to go and check what team Bree was on and wherever, and that part was difficult. I in general, I'll say this first. I think the more times we're playing volleyball, the better. The more people that watch volleyball, the better. I think any athlete who's played overseas will tell you that playing pro overseas is extremely difficult, and that we all wish there was a North American league that could offer the same things that playing in Europe or in Asia offers us. But one thing I would say, it was hard to almost follow the draft process. And I think for volleyball specifically, it is kind of a foreign concept, like drafting your team like that. I think initially is like, what do you mean you're drafting, like each week a captain's drafting? So I think part of it is that we're just not used to the format. And two, I found it really difficult to find out where, because I know like almost 70% of the girls playing, right? And to find where, each girl is, which team they're all on, I found a little complicated, but that's more like a logistical, okay, how do we publicize this better versus I did find it interesting, like some of the matchups when, when there was one weekend where like all the Minnesota girls were on the same team, like I found that super interesting. And then this last week, Mia Grant and Deja McClendon were playing beside each other. I'm like, oh, they went to Penn State together. Like, that's interesting. Like, that's cool, And if you just had stable teams, like, obviously, like, that wouldn't happen.
But I mean, you could still do it on a year-to-year basis or like a season-to-season basis, right? Like, say, for example, if they were to make it so that like maybe in like an AU season, and I'm just spitballing here because this is what I do, right? And then like an AU season, you have like, like maybe you have like a fall league and a spring league and maybe even a summer league, right? And like every single time there's a draft at the beginning and you stick with those teams, maybe that's a little extreme, but
or I mean, maybe you don't redraft the entire team and you do kind of like,
I like that
like
too.
NFL style where you have like a franchise tag, right? Like you can't be drafted. Like you keep 60% of your team, but then 4 girls are available to be drafted, and then they go into like a draft pool, and then you could be redrafted or you could not, but the core of the team stays the same. That would be something that would be interesting to see.
Yeah,
what happens.
But then for me, like the point scoring, it got so monotonous because like you had your team captain, and because it wasn't a team thing that people were going to be winning, but like, like at what point, like everyone knew 3 weeks ago that Jordan Larson was going to win, right?
Yeah. Okay. True.
But
last night, Karsta was in the top 4, and she lost 3 straight to Bree's team, and she dropped out of the top 4. So things changed. And so then Ari and Bree went into spot 3 and 4, and Karsta dropped out because her team lost. So I disagree with that premise about, yes, Jordan was going to win, but it's Jordan Larson. Like, of course she won. Or not of course, but like, it's not a huge surprise, right?
No.
But for everyone else, I know someone who moved up 6 spots last night because of their performance. But 6 spots.
So like, just a question, like, does that benefit them any way more? Like, do you get paid out more if you finish at a higher spot?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure it's not like if you finish like, because like, I'm sure it's like not if you finish 40th and 39th, you're going to get more, but I'm sure it's in groupings. Okay. So I didn't know, I didn't know that part. Yeah, I guess so. It's just,
I do think that they need to adjust. I saw someone, I don't remember on which forum I was on, but one of them said about, the barrels that the stats points were fair, which is the hard part, right? Like, I hope everyone knows what we're talking about. Imagine people who have like, what is April? You get points for each volleyball action, right?
Yeah.
So like, for libero specifically, like it's really hard to accumulate stats in general. So like, or if you just don't get served, if you're a libero and you're freaking diming every ball and you just don't get served in most of the sets that you're playing, but you play great defense, like should you be penalized points wise for not getting served? Like, well, that's not really fair. But like versus an outside attacker who's getting us set a lot more balls versus a middle, like your percentage counts a lot more than your outside does because you get points per kill, not points per execution percentage.
Yeah.
So I trust them that they will probably make some adjustments in the scoring system, but it is the first season.
Yeah. I mean, like, don't get me wrong.
I found it.
Sorry, go ahead. You go first.
I found it entertaining. I was watching as many games as I could. The time difference for me, because I'm in Turkey, was difficult. But like last night, not great. Last night for Bree's last game, we were all able to watch it, all being the national team. We all watched it if we weren't in practice because it was early. And that was super fun. Like, and And I think they will adjust the point system a little bit, but I definitely think the core of what they're trying to do is really interesting and can only be something beneficial for volleyball. Like I would play I would play in the league.
Yeah, you'd like
I would do it.
next year. You'd play in the league. Like
oh, I'm not committing to anything.
Yeah, see, that's what I thought.
It became no. I would consider it for next season. Absolutely, absolutely, I would, because the volleyball quality, well, at times was lower than I expected. At other points, there were some amazing rallies and really, really good volleyball at certain points. I think like anything, it's their first season. And so there's some things that they need to work out. And obviously they're working in a bubble, which ideally they wouldn't be working in a bubble, right? So like it's COVID, who knows?
Yeah, that's
but
true.
It was interesting. I found it's different. I don't even know if it counts as volleyball because it's like so strange, the point system, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was really interesting to me.
It was definitely interesting to me too. And like, I love the fact that they were doing it. And I think when you look at it objectively as well too, I think it's hard because like I'd love for this to grow as into a real league, you know, where we have like real teams.
What do you mean by real league?
Like in a real league where we have teams located in places that have specific fan bases to those teams that are injected into the community. And, you know, and I'm not talking about like a real league. Like we don't need to have an NBA, NFL, NHL level league. You know, this is one thing I've learned so much about watching European volleyball is that professional sports in general outside of North America has a much different look on average than what we know.
Completely different.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that, like,
the club system.
100%. Like, I would love
belonging to a club is so different.
And you know, like I would love to see that happen. But all things considered, I think they did an amazing job at just creating an event and creating an event that was palpable and not shit. Because like how many times have you seen volleyball stuff that's just done half-assed with like no thought put to it? And I think that they like the whole production side and everything like that, it was very good. The fact that they were able to pull this off was very good. The names that they got, incredible. But it just,
and a lot of it was athlete
driven,
organized and athlete driven, which is so important. It's like, so I cannot underestimate that. Like Jordan, Cassidy, like the girls who have been involved in the beginning of planning an AU, like put their heart and sweat into this. And I think they are trying to establish a league where athletes are actually heard and are in charge of what happens to them. And like, this is something super small, but like the fact that they could wear leggings instead of shorts. I don't know why that I like hold on to that, but like for me, that's huge. It was like, that just shows like that are athletes who are not thinking about how they look. They're caring about how they feel and how they can perform their best. That is fantastic.
It was surprising to me, and you know, like because it was like brought up in like one of those like little like vignette things that they were doing in between sets. And my girlfriend was just like, once again, she's not a volleyball person whatsoever. She's a dancer, so she was like, "Oh, like I didn't even notice that." And I was like, "Yeah, kind of." So like, first of all, I like the fact that you could tell that the tops of their leggings were a different material, so that they could help them slide. But also, I almost found that they looked better wearing the leggings. Like it looked more professional. It looked like a little bit sleeker. Like I liked the look of the leggings quite a bit. And
you know what my response to that will be?
What's that?
We don't care what it looks like.
Okay, fair enough.
We care about how we perform. We care, like, yes, of course, we want it to be palatable so that people will watch. But like, shouldn't the number one thing be like how athletes perform and how they feel? If they feel good, they'll play good.
No, absolutely.
And not be worrying about shorts. Like,
I mean, coming from the guys' side of the game, like that was always a big worry. Like how you look, like that look good, feel good, play good mentality is a huge thing. Like your drip on the guys' side of the game.
Oh, for sure.
I think and like that's kind of like what I was looking at it too, is that like I found the leggings to be like they had swag to them. You know, like I would love to see, and like not to say like I think that like if you want to wear leggings, wear leggings. If you want to wear spandex, wear spandex. Hell, if you want to wear shorts, wear shorts. Like I really could care less.
Yeah.
If you want to wear a bikini on the beach, wear a bikini. You know, like it's
Yeah, do what you want. Like that's my
yeah.
whole thing. Like do what makes you feel good. Like not just because you think you have to. Like do what makes you feel the best. So
One
the fact that they got to choose, which is the important part, they got a choice
mhm.
and they got to make it for themselves, which is what I care about. They
Yeah.
got to make that choice for themselves.
I
So
definitely agree. I definitely agree with that. Just having that, and even I found it interesting how, like Sia Michelle, for example, and she's been having
mhm.
doing such a great job with her blog and stuff like that. And one of the big things this year is that she hates all of these photo shoots that these women's teams
Yeah,
have to do. And
the
then
calendar stuff.
I saw like some people commenting in some forums and being like, it's so funny. Like she talks about how she doesn't want to do these photo shoots, and the first thing that they do when they're in Athletes Unlimited is go do a bunch of photo shoots. And I was like, true, but at the same time, these photo shoots that they're doing for Athletes Unlimited are very much on their own terms. It seems like it was the girls
Yeah.
organizing it, so not like, hey, guess what? You have to go do this bikini photo shoot for a calendar that we're going to be selling across the town. And guess what? Most people in the town may not know that we even have a volleyball team, but they're going to know what you guys look like in a bikini.
Yeah. And I the whole photo shoot thing is a whole nother discussion. But the issue that athletes have with the calendar stuff is that once again, our opinion is not wanted, it is not asked, it is contractually obligated. And so you don't have a say in how you're represented, which people will say, well, you signed the contract, you knew what you're getting yourself into. Yes, but it's not like on the contract they write, okay, you're going to have to stand in a bikini in front of on this beach. So these people who, you don't know will take your picture and then you have to sign it for the next 8 months and you don't have control over the editing or what you're wearing. Like that is what people have an issue with. There's nothing wrong with people. Like I've done photo shoots almost every year, except for this one overseas. And some athletes love it and it's super fun. Like who doesn't like doing a photo shoot? But there's a difference when you have a choice in how you're being shown what you're wearing. And there's a wide spectrum of what goes on during those photo shoots. So the difference between like the Athletes Unlimited athletes choosing to go do a photo shoot and having to contractually go stand and do, I think of Sarah Pavan who had to do that like Santa. Do you remember that one when she was in Italy,
Oh
her
my
last
God,
season?
yeah.
Right. I think of that situation and she said no. And she got laughed at and they tried to make her feel bad. And she said, fine, I'll wear the Santa costume. Like
Oh,
freaking that's just Sarah Pavan being a boss because that's who she is. But you know what I'm saying? But
yeah.
like those situations happen all the time.
Mhm.
And our opinion is not wanted in those situations, which is unfair. So I think there's a big difference between an athlete choosing to do a photo shoot with their friends for fun versus having to do a calendar photo shoot when they have zero control or say over how their bodies are portrayed.
Yeah.
So
I
that's my 2 cents. But we
I
could go on and on about that.
no, I 100% agree with you, but it's better when it comes from, I can't speak to
Yeah.
it because, no one would ever ask me to do a photo shoot. Let's be honest here. Right.
Yeah.
So
Like I've had in Germany, we always did photo shoots and both times I can say I had a really, really good time doing it. It was fun. I never felt uncomfortable about it. I was always nervous, like which photo they were going to pick and if it looked good, obviously. But I've had teammates who have texted in the group chat being like, oh, I can't believe this photo shoot I had to do today. I was wearing lingerie or I was wearing this and they don't feel great about the experience and they don't feel good after. And so that's when it's like, well, okay, if they're not enjoying themselves and they're being harmed in some way, like why are we still doing it? But if you say something, you're sometimes labeled, as Sarah can attest to, like they make fun of you or they judge you or they say that you're not, doing what you're supposed to do, which I really think is unfair. So
I agree. And I mean, hey, Sarah's got the last laugh too because she's a fucking beach world champion and all of those
heck
other
yeah.
girls can go,
She looked fantastic in that Santa suit. So Really, who got the last laugh? Sarah.
Man,
Sarah did,
I
for
feel
sure.
like people don't really know or understand the personality that Sarah Pavan has because she's so like quiet and stoic and like serious when you see her, but like
Hmm.
when you get to see her kind of like let loose a little bit, she's a great like
Funny and goofy.
she's
Yeah,
a fun person to be around. Yeah, like
totally. Yeah,
you
yeah.
like you do idolize Sarah a little bit, don't you? Like,
I just respect Sarah for a bunch of reasons. Some of them to do with volleyball, some of them not. I love how she went to Nebraska and got a fantastic education, and she didn't take basket weaving. She took like
oh,
some crazy
she was like biomed,
I forget what it was. Yeah,
she was like a 4.0. I remember her telling me one time, and I was just kind of
yeah,
like, who are you? Like, how do you do all of
yeah.
this?
She really valued her education, which is something, it's why I chose to go to Michigan. It's something I really valued as a student athlete. She's someone who has always stood up for herself and said when things are wrong and when she's felt uncomfortable. I think she's a boss, like just volleyball wise. I love watching her play. I think she's an exciting athlete to watch, whether it's was indoor or beach. I find it really fun to watch her. Yeah, I think she's fantastic. So yeah, love Sarah. She's great.
Do you think that she's had a do you think that she's been a catalyst in the change and growth of women's volleyball within Canada? And I think not only from the fact that like all the things you said, like you and I are the same age. Like we grew up in that era of like when we were first getting into the game. Like Sarah Pavan was going into Nebraska, and like she was
Yeah.
at Nebraska, and then she was in pro. So like we got to watch that process
Hmm.
growing up. But then also like I feel like when she left the indoor national team, it was kind of like a huge wake up call to being like, hey guys, like we're not doing something right here. And 10 years
Yeah.
later, like look, I think everyone's in a better position because of the steps that she's taken along the way.
100%. And I don't want people to forget that at the time, some people were extremely critical of Sarah for that
Hugely,
choice.
massively critical because like let's
I'm
be
trying to
honest,
be politically
like
correct.
massively critical because like let's be honest, it's not like our
Yes.
beach team was glowing like doing anything good back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we weren't winning medals, we weren't qualifying for events. Like Canadian volleyball a decade ago was a much different place, and like some of these Gen Zers need
Absolutely.
to realize
Yeah.
this.
But I think she also showed people, including myself, that you have a voice and you have a choice on what you do, and you don't always have to listen to naysayers. And she wanted to be an Olympian, and so she did what she felt was right, and she tried on indoor and realized that it wasn't the path. And so she made a choice and did an incredibly difficult thing by switching sports. It's not, I've thought about switching to beach. It is not easy to do what Sarah has done. I think because Sarah's always been someone who always shows up, she always executes, that it's maybe lost how difficult what she did really was. Like, I remember watching her first couple tournaments, like years ago now, and she'd only been playing beach for like 4 months. And she was already, I was like, oh my God, Sarah's so good. But like what she did as an athlete to switch positions at such a high level, like, I don't think anyone can really do it, what she could have done. But, she was really criticized for that choice, for following her dreams and saying, no, I want to be an Olympian. And like, this is how I do it. Like, what a badass.
And like
I wish we were all like that.
to be honest, like when you think back to it too, like that path of being an Olympian wasn't a guarantee back then. Like
No,
there
yeah.
was nothing
It's
saying
very different.
it's not like
Yeah.
like Heather Bansley wasn't a multiple time best defender in the world. Like
Right. Yeah.
she was a
There was no guarantee.
none. And
Absolutely
now
not.
she's a
Yeah.
world fucking champion.
Yeah.
Like that to me is like that's a story that like like that's a big one. Like that is like shows like the true like one of the biggest like growth stories of Canadian
Yeah.
volleyball. And I mean, and I don't want to disregard anything other members of like especially on the women's side, like when you like what Heather has done and what Melissa's done, what Brandy's done,
Yeah.
what like Jamie Broder and
Hmm.
Christina Valius did like
Christina. Yeah.
before them. And I think it's very much been a program thing. But like I definitely think that because I mean Sarah, she's the Christine St. Clair of volleyball, right?
Yeah.
Like
And she was also like, her dad also, for me personally, I remember he made a point to talk to my mom about going to the NCAA. and like what that was like and what we needed to do. And she always talks about this, but I remember when I was getting recruited, she was one of the only athletes. There were a couple other like known NCAA Canadian players, but very few, like less than 5 really. And Sarah being from Ontario and being going to the NCAA, it also made it a lot more possible in my mind when I was getting recruited that it was something I could do and I was good enough to do it. So I think she's had a lot of impact in a lot of different ways. But for me personally, that's one thing I think about. Like I don't, if Sarah hadn't gone to Nebraska, I don't know if a lot of other athletes would have continued to the NCAA.
You're very right. I agree with that. Especially like I remember walking around on crutches at 18U Nationals in Abbotsford, our 18U Nationals.
Oh God, yeah.
And because I sprained my ankle on day 2. Thanks a lot, Victoria Chargers. But he came under the net.
Still
bitter.
Holding a grudge.
Still bitter. And I remember.
How many years ago was that? Gosh.
That was 11.
11
years ago.
11 years ago.
But and I remember and like asking because my team was done and everyone wanted to go on hikes and I couldn't because I was on crutches. So I just like sat around and watched games. You guys finished 4th at that event? 18U Nationals?
I don't even. Yeah, we didn't win.
No, I'm pretty sure you lost to Calgary in the semis or in the quarters.
That was my second 18U year because I had played up and then came back down.
But I still remember like walking around and talking to people, being like, okay, like Michaela Reeser, like where's she going?
Mm-hmm.
Like where's like Ali Gotch going? Like where are all the top players going? And if they were going to the NCAA, it was schools that like I had never heard of before. And then it was just like, oh, that's Jen Cross and she's going to Michigan. And, as you know, my history of my association of national championships with you is very high because it seems like I've talked about this before, but my first ever memory of a Canadian national championship walks into a gym in Moncton and Jen Cross is like front and center crushing a step around and like yelling, and I'm 15 years old and being like, oh my goodness, like what am I getting myself into?
Back in the day, huh?
But
Moncton.
Like you were like the only athlete that I remember who was going to like a big school and a big program. And now if you look across, like we've got girls at Wisconsin,
everywhere,
there's girls at like everywhere, like, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, for sure. And I know people get hung up on the NCAA thing. I was telling Everett before, I was listening to Shai's episode with Everett on the podcast. And Shai was talking about how if you get a chance, everyone should go to the States. And I text Everett, be like, no, don't say that. I truly believe that whether you go to the NCAA or U Sport is the wrong question to be asking yourself when you get recruited. The question is, where is the best place for me, regardless of if that's in the NCAA or U Sport? And that I feel like the pendulum's always swung back and forth. I feel like it goes back and forth all the time about, well, athletes go to the NCAA and they have either really great experiences or really terrible experiences. And that kind of shades people one way or the other. But in general, like there's a place for everyone to play. And I don't necessarily think everyone should go to the NCAA. I think you should go to the school that's the best place for you. So there's a lot of things that go into that, but continue. Go.
I think when you look at the national team, that's very true. Like you look at, you've got like yourself and Alexa Gray, who went down to the NCAA, played for big schools. You've got a Kira Van Ryk, who played at UBC, for 2 years. Hell, you've got Danny, who played at VIU in the CCAA.
Exactly.
Right? And like that path isn't guaranteed. Volleyball is like a late blooming sport. Maybe I think for girls it's a little bit earlier. I think we know that, like based off like the LTAD model. But still, like I definitely fully agree with that. I think that for certain athletes, like for example, I don't know if you would have enjoyed your time as much at a U Sports school. Like I think
that's the thing though. For me, going to the States was 100%, no doubt in my mind, the right choice for me. Mm-hmm. But that's the thing, is that there's some athletes who it's not the right place for them. And I go on and on about how much I love Michigan. Clearly, like,
yeah.
I'm a hardcore, like, go blue. I bleed Michigan to the day I die. I had the best experience ever. However, that does not mean that everyone who gets an offer to the States should go. And it might not be the best place for them. The amount of people I see go to a school who doesn't have the program that they want, like mind-blowing to me. Like, you're going to school, like if they don't have a program, you shouldn't go. Either they don't like the coach, or they fall in love with the idea of a scholarship but don't really want to be playing Division 1 volleyball. And maybe going to U Sport, where the season is spread out and it's a different environment, then that's where they would have thrived as an athlete and would have developed the most. Like, okay, for example, Brandy. I played Brandy in high school volleyball when she was at Mayfield. I hope she remembers this. I'll have to talk to her. I'll have to send her a message. But we played each other in high school volleyball. And she ended up staying at York and developed into a world-class beach athlete.
Mm-hmm.
If Brandy had gone to the States, she would not be in the position she is now.
No, because
so, like,
she would have been eaten alive at, like, because, like, we remember in club volleyball, like, she was like people
she had not figured out her coordination yet. She was so physical, but she had a wonky left arm swing, you know, like,
I mean, it's still pretty wonky, but it was way wonkier. It was a T-Rex swing.
It was
back
way
then,
wonkier.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, like, once again, going to the NCAA would not have aligned with her eventual goals. I don't know if she had this vision of being a beach athlete back then, but staying in Canada opened the door for her to become a beach future, possibly Olympian, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so if she had gone down the path that, well, this looks nice, like, this is what people should do, the highest level athletes should do, well, you know, like, and I say that as someone who, once again, loved Michigan. It was being a student athlete in the NCAA was the best thing I've ever done. But that doesn't mean it's best for everyone.
Yeah, I could not have said it better myself. I agree, absolutely. Was there any U Sports schools or CIS schools back then that recruited you?
Not a single school recruited me. That is the funny part.
When did you confirm going to Michigan?
Well,
that's the thing.
Well, that was the thing. I brought it up with coaches since and be like, you guys didn't even try to convince me. And they all said, well, we knew right away you were going to the States. And I committed fairly early. I just turned 16, I think. I was pretty young. I was in the beginning of grade 11.
Mm-hmm.
So I was early, and it was a Big Ten school, and I was a top recruit, blah, 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 blah. But no Canadian schools approached me ever to try to throw wrinkle in the plan, you know? And there is a really big difference in the way Canadian coaches recruit. The timeline is just backed up, so they do kind of have a disadvantage. Like, high performance athletes are identified earlier for women, especially, like the regional team program and all that stuff. Like, high level athletes are being identified, but the recruiting process doesn't really pick up until the end of your U17, but mostly in your U18 year for U Sport, which during COVID and everything, I actually spoke to a lot of teams, a lot of athletes about recruiting, most of them Canadian. And that was a big fear, that they were like, what are we going to do for recruiting now? Athletes are still very concerned about, you know, recruiting for U Sport, because it just happens very differently. It's a lot. I feel like the time between when you first have contact with the coach and when you actually commit is like a year long, versus NCAA. Like, once you start the like unofficial visit process, it's within those like 4 or 5 months that you're making your choice.
Oh, wow.
So
that's quick.
Yeah. Like, I'm trying to think, but I got identified. I was playing a year up. So I was playing U17, but I was actually 15 years old at a tournament in Vegas, which was a huge showcase tournament. And as we talked about before, or not everyone knows, but I played for a very good club volleyball team, Durham Attack. We're the only team to win 5 consecutive national championships. We're the best. Yeah. I know everyone hates us. Whatever. We're great. So we were in Vegas, and that team in particular had a lot of athletes who were going to the States. So I got identified that way, and that was in like March. And then I started the unofficial visit process in like August of like the next next school year. And then I was committed by October. Like
Wow.
there was only like a 2.5 month time between my actual like calling coaches or responding to coaches and then going on visits and stuff. It was really fast.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
Was
like youth sports is just at a disadvantage because if you want to try to persuade athletes who are on the path or possible path to go to the NCAA, youth sport athletes or coaches have to catch them really quick in the development. And it's just different of how that system. But from the coaches I've spoken to recently, they are shifting earlier and earlier to try to adjust. But it's a different system.
I've
It's just so it's hard.
I've definitely seen a big shift in youth sport volleyball, both in the men's and women's side, of starting to take it more seriously in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like if we take York, for example, where Brandy played, when Brandy was playing there, they had a part-time coach, right? They had a part-time coach who was like also a high school principal, right? Whereas like now I don't think you can find part-time coaches in anywhere in youth sport where everything now is a full-time coach. And, even if you look down into the CCAA, I feel like has always been pretty strong, in Quebec and in the West Coast, whereas like the OCAA has gotten significantly stronger in the past few years. So I definitely see that, the programs in Canada are starting to catch up, and that more and more, like if you like there's very few.
I feel like Benjo at Trinity has, he's working he's got a dynasty though.
That's another story.
Trinity.
That is the best program for men's volleyball in North America.
100%.
Without a doubt.
He didn't get there by sitting on his thumbs and waiting till 18 year to recruit. So like I look at what Benjo's doing and the type of, because we would always talk about this athlete or whatever, and like he's working it like early as I think he should be.
That is the most underrated, and because like people on the outside of volleyball, like people who just watch, like don't see how much work he puts into to recruiting. But what's always been astonishing to me is how he continues to like maybe not like recruit and talk to, but how gracious he is with athletes after like they're not going to Trinity or something like that. But like that age limit or that recruiting age is really starting to come down in Canada.
Yeah. And I definitely think like once again, the pendulum swings the other way. Like in the NCAA, they've been dealing with an issue for years now about how it's so young, like it's crazy young. And they've had to put, the NCAA has had to put rules in place for volleyball because it has just become like this, like people are committing when they're 14U, which to me, it's just crazy. And like they're being, once again, USAV system is different in terms of identification, but they're being identified so early, which I didn't start playing until 14U. Like that's crazy. Like, and people are committing to go to college. Like what? Like for me, that's too young.
Yeah.
Even me, I wouldn't have changed my decision, but like at the time, emotionally, my best friends will tell you like, gosh, I was a disaster those like 3 or 4 months. Like you can ask the Crush boys and the girls.
I could not imagine.
Oh, I was a stress ball. Like I was so.
You were definitely so neurotic.
Oh my God, yeah. Like I was just so afraid of making the wrong decision, and less so now. But I feel like there's still a lot of mystery, and you just don't know that much as a Canadian going to the NCAA. Like there's still this kind of veil of information of what you should be asking, how much can you trust this, even the system, like what's an unofficial visit, versus an official visit, what conferences should you be interested in, is this coach legit, what are the rules versus like you can call them, but if they miss, like they can't call you, like stuff like that is just like the nitty gritty rules of NCAA is difficult. There is a barrier to entry. Like there is a barrier of knowledge, which is not ideal for Canadians for sure.
I definitely agree. And I think, as I mentioned, I think the quality of coaching in Canada has gone up so high. I agree. And like there's very few programs I would say, hey, you know what? You're better off going to the NCAA than going to play for like a Doug Reimer or a Dustin Reed or like a Melissa Bartlett, like there's. I
would play for all three of those coaches.
Absolutely. Like if you're going to go.
We used to not be able to say that though. It used to be it was a thing that, depending on where you went, you didn't know what type of coaching you're get. And especially, I feel like in Ontario, especially we are more keyed into the Ontario volleyball scene than anywhere, but Um, I feel like almost every program in Ontario right now is on the up. And like you look at what Dustin and Christine are doing and Jen at
Amazing.
York.
Yeah.
Jen, who's a friend of mine who's my age and like killing it. Like that's sick.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we need. We need athletes returning to the sport. We need female athletes. We need knowledgeable or coaches, like who know what's going on, who have some experience outside of Canada. And I feel like there's been such a dramatic increase in the quality of coaches in Canada for sure.
Yeah, that to me is like the years ago. I think it was like 2013. I was doing some like contract work for Volleyball Canada, and they wanted me to compile a list of all of the coaches in Canada who had coached at national championship the year before, and their goal was to find out like who had their levels. But as I was doing this, I was finding that there was a huge gap of coaches where there was a lot of coaches who were like 45 plus 50, and then like under that there was a huge gap, and then there was a lot of 20-year-old coaches. And what I've noticed a lot over the past decade is that those young 20-year-old coaches haven't left the sport. Before that, it was the coaches who coach volleyball were the high school coaches, the middle school coaches, the teachers who had the time to be able to do that. But now more and more, like I find that the coaching development in Ontario specifically, and I know it's happening elsewhere too, is leading to a dramatic increase in how we play the game in Canada, because there's coaches who are young and enthusiastic, and they know how to play the game the right way.
Well, even think about Shanice Marcel, who is a current beach national team athlete, but still highly involved in the York coaching program, and is still involved at York, which is just, I feel like would not have happened 5 years ago,
Yeah, I agree.
And to have access to, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I did a Zoom call with the Titans Volleyball Club, and Sophie is one of the coaches of the team.
Mm-hmm.
Sophie is another beach athlete.
Sophie
like,
Bukovic.
Yes. And like, how great is it for those athletes to have that exposure of a high level athlete, but who's coaching at a club level? Like, that's fantastic. Shanice at York, like, the more we can keep female athletes specifically involved in sports and coaching longer, the better we're going to be. And it also ties into the national team, is that for a long time we've had an issue with keeping athletes playing past like 26, and there's so many factors that go into that, but we've had it's just not an issue for the men. You look at the men's team. I mean, hey, if Gavin wanted to come back, I'm pretty sure they would have him. Like, athletes just in general play a lot longer on the men's side than they do on the women's side, and whether that's because we're stopping to have families or our bodies are wearing down, but a lot of it is just like lifestyle, right? Like, to play overseas is difficult, to play on the national team is difficult, and it just seems to be we're having a longevity issue. And so we really, as like a program or volleyball in Canada, like, how do we keep athletes in the game longer? And then once they do retire, how do we keep them in the sport for their lives, really? Like, that's ideally what you would want. You would want the most experienced people coaching the next generation. So yeah, I don't know what the shift or what caused the shift in Ontario specifically and elsewhere about athletes, our age still like involved in coaching, but something had to cause it, so whatever they did, we need to like keep going and keep athletes in the game longer and coaches in the game forever.
Yeah, absolutely. If possible. And I mean, like, we've also seen a huge increase in high quality female coaches. For so long, like Christine Drakic, and it was like Christine Drakic and Lori Eisler.
And Lori, yeah.
And now, like, if you look at the OUA, like we mentioned Jen Nielsen, and we mentioned Melissa Bartlett, we got Natasha Spalding as well, down at Queens, and like there's so many good young female coaches who are just bringing a different perspective to the game. Even like I've always had like massive respect for like Brenda Willis, who was a female coach on the men's side of the game.
Yeah, and she was a boss. Love her.
Yeah, I've been thinking recently. She liked when I second time I posted China's podcast, because China's podcast has been out for a while, and I just completely, like, my ADHD, like I had posts to promote it on Instagram and everything, and it just it got
Just didn't
lost.
happen.
Yeah, so
Got lost somewhere in the shuffle.
it's been on the website and it's got like some good views, and now it's getting like a second resurgence,
Yeah.
so it's great. But she shared it yesterday, and I was like, man, I need to have Brenda on here because like Brenda
She's got some knowledge. She's seen some stuff.
she's seen some stuff, and like
Yeah.
Brenda has also been like a huge part of like my development in the volleyball world as well. So like I commentated my first game ever with Brenda back in 2011.
Solid. I would just love to hear her whole story about how it was coaching
but
the men.
especially in the early days, you know, like
yeah, like when
she's like an OG, like she was like,
I remember like this was it was Canada Games, so the summer of 2009 or 20 09 I think. Me and Ali Gok were so young on that team, and we were training at U of T, and some of the on the boys team were talking about her with such respect, you know, and like admiration. And I just remember thinking like how, like I was 16 at the time, like how cool is that? Like it just seems so out of place for her to be coaching on the men's side. And I would love to hear how she got that job, how it was, and I'm sure the things she's had to overcome as a coach. I would love to hear that. So you got to get her on the podcast. Got to convince her.
Oh, I don't
I
think
want to hear it. I want to know.
Take any convincing at all. I think it would just take a quick message
true.
and being like, Brenda, let's do this, and she'd be like, absolutely. You know, like
I just remember the boys that were on the Canada or Team Ontario, whatever it was called, games team would always speak about her in such respect, and she would show up at training and help and stuff, which it made an impact on me about how much they respected her and listened to her. And yeah, just as someone who could tell a very fun story, I feel like. So you got to get her on.
I mean, like
so
I remember being like in grade 7 playing boys basketball, and like at my high school, and our woman was a coach. And I mean, for me, having a female coach was never a thing. Like my mom was my first soccer coach when I was 4, right? And she was so it was never an issue. Yeah. But you know, like, and I mean, I went to maybe not the. It wasn't like I grew up in the suburbs. I didn't go to my high school in the suburbs. Like we had a police officer constantly at my school, and I was also the only white kid on the basketball team as well too. Because you know I go to a French school where we've got a lot of Haitians, we got a lot of Africans, we got a lot of Lebanese kids. And
it's Canada. What do you expect?
Yeah,
love it.
100%. And I was very astonished to see how right off the bat this female coach, Madame Gamache, just came and like took control of the court, and all of these guys who, you know, I'd seen them in class, I'd seen them around, you know, some of them didn't finish high school and ended up in jail and stuff like that, but in grade 7, like she
had their respect.
Yeah, you know, and it just took no shit. And you know, I could honestly, I'd see you coaching guys more so than girls.
Yeah, I feel maybe.
And like I've done both and know the difference between the two of them. And something tells me that, especially with like kids today who aren't necessarily, you know, like you, let's say, you might be better on the guy's side.
Yeah, it's definitely something I thought about, and a lot of people have asked, and Shannon got hired. Was like, oh, she's the first woman. I'm like, yeah, it took way too long to have a woman. But then also I never think about like, imagine if after the Olympics a woman would get considered for the men's job. Like that seems super formal to us, right? So like I still think there's a lot of work to do in that area, like just with us and our expectations. Like I would never think personally, like I'll be honest, like if a woman was hired as the men's coach, I'd be like, oh, super weird, super strange. But like, why is it we think that? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of work socially, I think, as a it's not just volleyball, but this goes with everything, right?
This goes way past volleyball.
Way past volleyball. This is not just a volleyball thing, but yeah, it's just crazy. Like is there another female coach who has coached U Sport or CIS other than Brenda? I don't know. I don't know any personally, but because she always stood out in my mind and be like, oh, I always thought that was so cool. but I don't know if there's been anyone else.
Not to maybe like definitely probably like assistant coaches and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sure there's been assistants, but
like I'm pretty
in terms
sure
of head coach,
like Mark Dodds at Saskatchewan, his wife Shelly is one of the assistants, and you know, stuff like that. And you know, like I think that's great too, but I don't think anything like Brenda where she was the head coach.
Yeah. And you know what? That's the thing. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter if you're a male or a female. If you can communicate with your athletes, then that's what matters,
Absolutely.
right? But
100%.
that's what really matters. If you can communicate and you can coach them and you can lead them, then like it really shouldn't matter. But for, you know, in 2021, it's still incredibly foreign. So, and do you know when Brenda got that job at Queens?
Dude,
like she had it for
she was there for
a long time.
Like 20, 30 years.
Yeah, like a
long time. And I mean, I did know the stat at one point and I've forgotten it. So yeah. I think the what we need to be doing is sitting Brenda down just like this.
Yeah, this is becoming like a Brenda hype podcast.
Yeah, we've hyped a few people. We've hyped Sarah. We've hyped Sarah Pavan. We've hyped Brenda. So yeah, people.
All great people to hype though. So I'm happy to keep going.
100%, right? So it's interesting to think of, you know, how, and I think we're going to continue to see more and more women's coaches jumping into the game, and I think we need to. Yeah. Like for me when I was coaching,
I think we do too.
For me when I was coaching girls volleyball, it was very important for me to try to bring in like female coaches, and specifically ones who had like never coached before. You know, like I didn't want to go and like poach an assistant coach from someone and be like, you know, like I wanted to be like you know, like you are like I don't know if you know like Jessie Califf.
No, I don't think so.
Very involved in like the U of T program. Like she was one of my assistant coaches, and like she's great. She's still coaching and stuff like that. So I think it's very, very important that we have, you know, like for the optics of things, absolutely yes. But like for myself as you know, a middle-aged 20-year-old male coaching a bunch of 13-year-old.
You just call yourself middle-aged?
No, 20-some, whatever. You know, like I got mixed up with my words. No, I'm not. We are not middle-aged. But you know, like a 25, 26-year-old, like, you know, male, it was very important for me to have female coaches on my team, just because like there were certain things that I was never going to be able to relate to my athletes about. And there were certain things that I knew that they weren't going to be comfortable speaking to me about. And that there's certain things that I knew that I was going to relate information that wasn't going to compute well with them. And they just needed something to explain that difference.
And I think the difference matters a lot more the younger the athletes are, right?
100%.
Like,
absolutely.
So at a U sport level, I really don't think it would matter, because it's not like you would have an all male staff or an all female staff. Ideally, you would have the best people for the job, and it would most likely be a mix. But like I'm thinking about if I was 14U, you know, like what I always had male coaches, except for 1 year, and she was fantastic. Ann Boddicker Grover. Her name was Ann Boddicker, and she is an All-American and went to Ohio State. And she was a huge, huge influence on me on where I went to school. She actually, my mom and I, it was super early in the recruiting process, and I had been getting all these like mail packages from schools, and we met up one day at a Tim Hortons, and she sat there and she split them into a pile of schools I should talk to and schools that I shouldn't waste my time on.
That's amazing.
And gave me, it was, at the time, I had no idea how important that like relationship was and conversation was, but it was vital to like where I ended up, and thank gosh she was there. But yeah, I mostly had male coaches when I was younger, but it's interesting to think. I think you're right that there would be some things how you communicate, or you just wouldn't relate in some way to young female athletes, that it's important to have a female voice for them to relate to. But I think it matters a lot more as you're developing as an athlete, like 14U through even to 18U. I think it would be important. I think that's a bigger factor when they're younger, for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah. There's like in like one of my last years of coaching, I actually coached with Brandy. Brandy and I were assistants together on a 17U team, and it was great because like,
that would have been fun.
Our head coach was Keith Waslick.
Yep.
And
Solid.
I love Keith quite a bit, and let's just say that he's perfected his craft. So maybe assistant coaching him wasn't the best for me who wanted to develop, because it was just kind of like, hey, you're going to come and like hit down balls. And I was kind of like, oh, all right. Like I want to learn, but all right. But yeah, it was great because like a lot of the times it was like, and so this, just for context, I started coaching with Brandy. She had just finished her season where like at the end of the season Heather picked her up for the World Tour Finals. So like,
oh nice,
Brandy and I were like subwaying and stuff to practice and like talking about how like, you know, like this, she was like, she was so broke and there was so much uncertainty about what she was going to be doing, but she was having this opportunity. And I just remember being on the subway on the TTC and like hyping her up and being like, dude, you're going to be so good. You're going to be so good.
Yeah,
and
you
sure
gotta
enough,
do
like,
this.
You
it's
gotta
gonna be the
like,
best thing you've ever done.
You know, and like sure enough, like she's there.
Yeah.
But like I
cool.
still remember like being able to coach with her and how much like the girls would just gravitate towards her as well.
Yeah.
You know, and how much, and I mean like she was just a member of the beach national team. She wasn't Brandy. Like she wasn't Brandy back then. Yeah. And I still remember like watching these girls' faces, because we'd always play like 2-on-6, and it would just be me and Brandy against the 6th event, and I would just chuck balls up, and of course Brandy's just like half jump carving, right? And eventually they started to learn to serve me. They finally got it along. But like watching these girls and like how eye-opening it was to see Brandy like that at practice and see how dominant that was, and it was just kind of like it's definitely important.
Well, yeah, and to bring it back to Sarah Pavan, like you think about athletes who had an impact, like Sarah was and continues to be an idol and someone that young female volleyball players look to as a success story. And like, if I work hard, like this is what I can achieve, you know. Same with Melissa, same with all of those girls. Like having strong female people that athletes can look to is so important. Like, could not be understated how important that is for development. Do you think it's the same for men though? Do you think like that, like, I feel like it's so critical for women athletes to have someone that they can look to. You don't, that's why I'm like, I don't know if men...
it's so natural, right? Because like we grow up and like one of the things that you can be as a young boy is a professional athlete, you know? And not even
that's
like,
an option.
And I mean, I'm not saying that's not an option for women, but like it's like, you know, it's like firefighter. I want to be in the NHL. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be an astronaut. You know, and I think that's very much less the case for women. You know, so like
it's an option in the drop down menu for when you're picking your profession for boys, but for girls, I don't know. That's in like the other category where you got to write it in yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
Analogies.
Absolutely. And like to be perfectly honest, like I've noticed like quite a bit looking at like the social factors between like why women play sports and why men play sports, just from what I've like been when coaching, and like. I don't know if we're ever going to see the same amount of female interest in sports as we do as a male interest in sports, you know, like on a fan basis. And I'm not talking about in women's sports. I'm not talking about like in women's sports. I'm talking about like in general, like
female viewership.
Absolutely. And it has nothing to do with like whether they're watching men's sports or women's sports. I think that, you know, in general, there's differences between women and men, and sometimes women have other interests that lie outside of the sport field, where it's much more common for a general male to be like, I want to watch sports.
I wonder. I don't know. Gender norms. Who knows? I don't know. I feel like my view on that is so skewed because I think about like all of my friends. I have like 3 normal friends who aren't in some way involved in volleyball. Even my friends who are now like doing normal things, like once played volleyball, you know, or I met them at the sports high school I went to, you know? So like, I feel like my circle and like viewership is skewed. To me, I'm like, every female I know loves and watch sports. Do they watch it as much as I do? No. But like they're still interested.
But at the same time, like, so like Mike, as I mentioned, like my girlfriend's a dancer. and she does not watch sports. She like until this year she did not watch sports. So like hanging out with
Yeah,
her and
but
her
she's
friends.
a dancer. She's an
Oh,
athlete.
100%.
So,
I've never
so like,
but like I'm not whoa. I'm not at all like I love my girlfriend for a lot of reasons, but like her drive and her like ability to do stuff like that is one of the main
yeah,
reasons, you know?
totally. Yeah.
And so I've never,
Dancers are
ever,
crazy.
ever said that that's not athletic, but it's not a sport, you know? And like talking about what sports are I've had,
Huh.
like,
Okay.
like their view of sports is a very like North American, it's misogyny. It is bad, you know, like it.
Do you view cheerleading as a sport? Competitive cheerleading?
Yeah. I watched Cheer. It was great.
Oh, fantastic show.
I mean, I didn't actually watch it. I edited video.
You didn't?
Well, like no. I edited. It was like I was staring at this computer editing, and then it was on the screen like right over here as you know.
Wow.
Sam watched it, and I like sat there and watched. I wasn't attached to it, but I had.
I was invested. I am still invested in it. I still follow them all on social media. There's one who's dating a Big Brother alumni, which I'm very fascinated by. Oh, interesting. I'm surprised that.
But we're talking
you
about
don't
sorry, what'd you say?
I was just surprised that you don't consider dance a sport.
No. But that's like absolute. Yes and no.
Well, because you said that she's obviously dancers are athletes.
Yeah, but like they have no interest whatsoever in like sports. Like they have no interest in watching like hockey or basketball or soccer or like like even the fact that like
but you just named male dominated viewership sports. What about
I wouldn't
sports?
But like even like I'm talking about like obviously like I watch a lot of volleyball and stuff like that, and like they but like I would not as athletic as dance is, it's not a sport. Right, like there needs to be a winner and loser, and like for what they do, like after.
Yeah, but that's what dance competitions are for. It depends on what type of dance you're talking
because
about.
you don't do dance competitions after high school.
Like, there's dance teams in college.
Yeah, but like I'm like my girlfriend's 29 years old and dances for like a company.
Okay, I know.
And like wins like Dora awards where like she beats out the National Ballet of Canada type stuff.
Right.
You know? So like we're not enough. Like they're like they are there for the theater. They are there for the art, and it's very entertaining and it's very it's very physical and it's very athletic. And I would never ever say that they're not athletes. Trust me.
100%. Yeah.
Watching some of those dancers dance, like girls, guys, they've just got muscles everywhere.
Insane.
Makes me very insecure. However, I would not call it a sport, right? Like there's no winner and there's no winner and there's no loser at the end of the day. They're all working together to perform. It's a performance, right? But it's not a sport. Fair. They would not care about like any of those people would not care about like what goes on at the Olympics, and like I've heard them make like derogatory statements about like in the same way that like about dressing rooms and stuff like that, and so there's a very big disconnect, I think, for some people. Like there's a larger percentage of people that don't care about sports whatsoever, both male and female.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how as I said, my view on it is so skewed. Like sports are like such a pivotal part of my life. Like volleyball, yes, but like I am a hard
Liverpool.
Like I watch. Oh, like my whole family is a huge Liverpool family. My brother is a hockey coach in the US. Like sports are a daily occurrence in my house, Oh, my AirPods just died. That's how long we've been talking.
Yeah.
But what do you think about the whole NCAA?
That's fucking bullshit.
Situation.
It's fucking bullshit. But I think maybe it was you that posted about it or something where it was just I
went on a soapbox about it.
It really shows how like little they thought about it, And for me, that shouldn't be happening because the NCAA is I've been in these types of organizations where you organize events, and that I don't understand how that is a decision. It doesn't fall through the cracks. Yes. That's a decision where someone went like the women don't need that, and like that to me, if you're working for the NCAA and that was a decision you need to be fired. right? Like that, like that's to me, like we need to start seeing firings. Not the fact like it shouldn't never have gotten to the point that Dick's Sporting Goods is showing up the day afterwards with it. Like it needs to happen.
That was my thing too, that I tried to communicate with people, is that, well, there's so many issues with it, but that was an active choice. Like, as you know, when you plan these events, things are not like, things are double and triple checked. They go up the system, plans get approved, they get double checked, they get reapproved for budgeting. Like, it was a choice that they made in the planning of the event. And I feel like the NCAA, I feel like the best course of action should have been like, they should have just admitted they messed up. But when they said they're like, it was a space issue. Yeah. And Sedona Prince, who I find hilarious, she's on TikTok and she's hilarious. When she did the video being like, huh, weird, there's like this whole empty space. Oh, like, it was just a missed opportunity by the NCAA to handle a situation where they could have drawn attention to an issue that, like, it was an active choice. It went through the whole ladder system to get approved. And yes, it's fantastic that they came in and they got stuff from Dick's Sporting Goods and they created this lovely looking weight room. But there's two issues outside of those. One, the comments underneath the posts of the female basketball players advocating for themselves was truly disgusting. And I actually screenshotted them and posted them on my Instagram because I was so frustrated.
Come on,
but
Swaggy P, you're pathetic. Like, fuck.
Yeah, like, it was, yeah, like, does he not have a daughter? Like, what? It's just, and so, like, yes, it's great that they fixed it, but like, you can fix a weight room, but like, fixing people's view of some female sports is not that easy to fix. You can't just throw money at it and you can't just throw weight equipment at it. Like, there's a deeper issue that people, NCAA sports people in general, need to address, is that people do not respect certain sports. And someone brought this up to me. They responded to my Instagram and was like, oh, like the NCAA, they just don't have the money for it. I'm like, nah, like, that is not it.
What the
like,
fuck are you talking about? You don't have the money.
Yeah.
Like, no.
The NCAA they allocate money purposefully. Like, NCAA women's volleyball is an extremely well-funded sport.
That's because it's the third watch sport in the NCAA. Like, after men's football and men's basketball, it goes NCAA women's volleyball. Right.
And so people just need to do a lot of reflection as to why they are so, it's not just that people were mad, people were vile to these athletes and saying, you guys don't lift, you guys can't dunk, and like just degrading these athletes. And it's just like, okay, like what, like why, what in your brain is saying like, but that's hurt you. But that's like, why, like, what happened to you?
Like, that's why, like I expect that from like the normal pleb. Like, you played maybe some sports in high school, but you weren't good enough to go NCAA because, or any post-secondary, because as soon as you step into a post-secondary program, if you're like, it doesn't matter if like I went to Algonquin College for a year and I could see that the girls were grinding, and these weren't like once again, like the OCAA, I've seen girls who couldn't start for their high school teams go to start for OCAA schools the next year type of thing. Not good volleyball. But like, there's no doubt at all that if you are playing that sport, that you are using your time in the gym, that you are lifting, that you are getting stronger. You may not be necessarily, like, depending on the level you are, you may not be working as hard as the top D1 recruit on the men's side. If you're like, but it's such a disconnect. But like, for seeing someone like Swaggy P, you've played college ball. You've been in an athletic department where there's women and men. You've seen women push, and like, that's why, like, I've always, like, Sarah has been posting a lot of her workouts recently, and I love posting them because like, she's lifting heavy weights. Same with Melissa. Melissa's like maxing out the bar. Let's fucking show
maxing
that.
out her deadlifts.
Like, let's show that, because you know what? People love to hype up Sam Pedlow, and nothing at all against Sam Pedlow. Does a great job on Instagram. Like, looks great, but like, we should start
selling his brand. It's what he needs to do.
Absolutely.
It's great.
But we should be showing like that side of stuff just as much, because you know what, like at the end of the day, like for example, I've heard the argument, it's like these women athletes should be making as much as the men. And for me, it's not about making as much as the men, but like if you look at the WNBA, for example, when they're talking about their salaries, where the WNBA only gets 20% of the overall revenue. So only 20% of the overall WNBA revenue is put towards the salary cap for the next year.
Right.
And that's what the WNBA is like, that's what like they are trying to get. They're trying to get the same representation as the men. And yet that message gets distorted by a lot of people who don't know, and they're being like, you know, like LeBron James and Sue Bird should be getting charged or paid the exact same amount, which I disagree with, because LeBron James is a brand and he does all of these things, but his value, you know, that doesn't mean her value isn't lesser. But here's my like, this might be a little bit silly, but how about this? Because I found it very suspicious how quickly and how nice everything was done up. Like the next day, bam, the women's has, like, not only is it a nice...
See, that did not surprise me at all. I knew that would happen.
But like,
you think about like all the stuff that went down within like 48 hours. There was multiple athletes coming out, multiple physios who had taken photos, and like people were pissed.
But
like Twitter was a dumpster fire. If you clicked on the NCAA tab,
it was
on Twitter, like,
but so
it was bad.
So hear me out. Maybe, because like it was very like, it was like one day it's shit and the next day it's outstanding. Like not only do they have a sea of machines and everything's good, but you've got lights, you've got curtains, like it's a completely different space. Maybe what if this is a conspiracy theory from the NCAA?
Oh God, you're saying it was planned
to play? Absolutely. Why not? Because when have we ever cared more about the NCAA women's basketball tournament other than this year, because of all of this stuff? I'm just saying.
There's no way.
I'm just saying.
There's no way. The NCAA is a smart, savvy business. It is a business.
But this is exactly why I'm saying that, because this was the best.
But there's no way they would have taken in the negative press that they received for the possibility that people would suddenly care. There was also a chance, like, luckily there's more people in the comments who are like, this is outrageous, this is terrible. But there's, as we said, like thousands. Those comments got thousands of likes by people who are like, "Yep, this is what they deserve. So what? They don't need weights." It could have easily gone the right way. Proposition: if this had happened, say in 2015, I don't think people would have cared, because we haven't socially had those conversations about.
Well, I mean, people like you and I would have
female men. Some people would have cared. But I don't think the response would have been the same if it had happened at a different period of time. I think we're in 2021. We're in a period of where people are
pissed,
more woke, more aware, or trying to be, you know. And I do think that people are starting to be more aware of systematic issues, and there's lots of them. But one of them is female athletes and how they're viewed. I don't think it would have had the same response. People would have been outraged as much as they were if it had happened even 5 years ago. I just don't think that would have been the response.
I agree.
Really don't.
I agree. I still think that there would have been outrage, maybe not to the same extent, but I don't know. I obviously I don't actually believe that, but like, you know, it's an interesting conspiracy theory to think about.
It was interesting to see how pretty the weight room did look,
right? Like
the lights and the curtains.
To me is the suspicious part, because like I've been in these event planning situations, and I've been in those situations where like, okay, our original plan doesn't work and we need to do this overnight, and it's going to be haphazardly put together. Like the amount of organization that went on to be able to make all of that happen was extreme, and it doesn't compute in my head how they could have done it. Now maybe I'm probably way off, but it's just a fun thing to talk about, to think about.
But you know what? It wasn't just the weight room.
No,
it was
the food as well too. Brutal.
The food, the swag, which people are like mad about, like, well, you should be happy you get anything in terms of swag.
No, that to me is the biggest bullshit, because all you do is double your order with different sizes, right? It's like it's just the exact same thing. Like you just double all of the sweaters and t-shirts and bags and balls and everything you're doing, and you give the same thing to the women.
mean, maybe I just play the middle too much, but like I can understand why they had different suppliers for the men's and the women's. You had different sponsors, and therefore you cannot have competing. Like for example, if you have one clothing company that's a sponsor for the men's but not the women's, then you can't just duplicate that. So therefore, the women's have to find a different clothing person who's going to provide that stuff. So like I understand why there's a difference, but like I'm mad that people are like, well, you should be happy you get anything. And it's like, okay, like you could be happy we are playing sports right now. You know, you could always go down the rabbit hole.
Those people who go get COVID, like, just, stop it.
I don't. Okay, that's what you said, not me. But it's just frustrating when I feel like whenever female athletes try to advocate for themselves, it's always like, but what about this and this? But if a male athlete does it, it's like, yep, totally, we get that, we understand your argument isn't perfect, but like we get what you're saying. Versus like when women advocate for themselves, it's always picked apart, and it's like, well, what about this situation and this factor and this factor? And it's like, well, yeah, duh, of course, like that's life. Like shit is not so straightforward, but like there's no benefit of the doubt whenever female. It's the same thing as the calendar we talked about. People will be like, well, you should be thankful you're playing. Totally, but that doesn't mean we can't have opinions and feelings about something that we're being forced to do. That doesn't, like, one does not eliminate the other and vice versa. It's just like it's a constant battle of like it's frustrating. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, I agree. Like for me, I want to see someone in North America like fully invest into a women's sport league and like see what happens. Like I think if you start anywhere, you need to start with women's volleyball or women's soccer and really like go after it. Like those are the two biggest sports, and like I enjoy the WNBA, but I enjoy, for example, like I enjoy watching women's volleyball sometimes maybe even more than men's volleyball, just because of like the rallies and
I definitely prefer it. Yeah, for me, the rally length, and it's just it's a different game. Men's and women's volleyball is just so drastically different in terms of a bunch of things. But
yeah. In Canada, like for one of the biggest things that I look at is like why the
CPL
is a men's league and not a women's league. Like there is no reason.
What is CPL?
The CPL is
I don't even know what that
is. The Canadian Soccer League, the Canadian Premier League.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like when you look at the fact that like who the athletes that they're getting for the CPL and like where they're playing and stuff like that, like there's no reason that we shouldn't have a women's soccer league. Like we're talking about like youth sport athletes. Like when you look at like the how soccer athletes would break down, like the top would just go to Europe, then the next would go to the NCAA, MLS, and then so like once you get to the athletes who are playing youth sport, we're talking about like the third tier of athletes. Whereas like if we had a women's soccer league, we'd have women who were playing on the national team starring for those programs in communities where there's more women's soccer players than there are men's hockey players. So why the fuck do we not have a women's like CPL program? Like that to me is like and not to mention if you want to talk about money, the Women's World Cup made more money in Canada than the U21 Men's World Cup that came a few years before it. From ticket sales. So like you can't make the argument that we shouldn't have like women's soccer in Canada, for example.
Well, yeah, and the U.S. soccer situation I always find really fascinating because because the U.S. women's team is one of the most well-known national teams of any national team in America.
But same with like a Canadian,
same with the but comparatively, I feel like the women's team is always used as a poster child, being like, wait, hold on, like your men's team is terrible, like really not good, but your women's team is sitting in the freaking White House right now having a talk with the vice president about equality. They have some pull power. So in terms of like funding women's sports, like there's this argument that there is not a viewership for women's sports, and that is just so false. It's so false, and it's so clear in the USA soccer programs, more clear than almost anywhere else, about how there is viewership for the women's team. 100%. So that argument is just invalid. It's crazy. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We're preaching to the same choir right now. So
we are.
That's kind of why, you know, like I that's part of why I wish, I get selfish that I wish like the Athletes Unlimited was more, because like I want to start seeing that being implemented here in North
More
America.
as in like bigger, more athletes, more.
No,
everything.
just more legitimate, that like we know that there's going to be a next season. Because as of right now, is there any guarantee, right? Like there's no teams that are advocating, like there's you know, it's just this one entity. So say something happens, maybe we lose it for next year. Like there's no guarantee there, right?
Yeah.
And like, to be perfectly honest, I don't see Athletes Unlimited being around in 10 years. In being like, in being the top league. I just don't, like you said it, like how much your family loves Liverpool, right?
Yeah.
You watch Liverpool before you watch soccer.
Yeah.
Right? You can't do that with Athletes Unlimited.
I don't know.
Like, that's the thing, for even with men, it's like sports is much more of an emotional choice. It's, I love this team, you know? It's national pride, it's regional pride, it's what this team represents for me. And it's
I think that's a factor for sure. Like that's part of what, like, big institutions, like that's why the NCAA is successful. That's why, like, you know, Michigan football, like that's a big deal, you know, and people have been in love with Michigan football for their entire lives. And we don't like a certain state or a certain school that's like 3 hours away. We don't even say it, you know, like that goes deep rooted. But I do think with the AU stuff, that something that they do have going for it is that a lot of the fans have a really big connection to a lot of the girls who played in the NCAA. Like there are cult followers of Jordan Larson and the big players that did play this season. So like, and De La Cruz, like for sure, like people are in love with her. So I think it's, I know what you're saying is that to have it be a long-term lasting thing, that you need to have that sort of deep-rooted connection with a team, not a team that's changing all the time and in a specific location. But I don't know, like what AU's trying to do is trying to change the system of how we view sports. So I don't know. I think it still could work, because you go on Volley Talk or some of the other volleyball boards, trust me, they are active about the AU stuff. Okay. Very high active.
All right,
I'll just say.
Yeah, that's fair. Hey, maybe you're seeing like a different side of it than I am, and it, like ultimately, if you're to tell me that like in 10 years, like if you were to tell me that in 10 years time, like women from Canada and the US can still be playing in AU and still be making money, and it's still on Fox and still on CBCSports.ca, you know, like, then fantastic, absolutely. Like I'm so happy.
That's the thing. I think I'm hopeful. I don't know for sure, but I'm really hopeful. As I said before, it can only be a beneficial thing in my eyes. It can only be, we want AU Pro Volleyball as volleyball fans to succeed. We want them to do as well as they possibly can, even if it's different than what we expected or different how we would do it. Mm-hmm. Anyone who's creating viewership for volleyball, I'm fully in support of.
Absolutely.
No matter, because it is only beneficial for the sport. It's only beneficial for female sports and viewership. So I really hope it is around in 10 years. I hope it's grown and evolved. And the thing with AU is that they do have softball and they are doing lacrosse. So, you know, there is a system behind it. Mm-hmm. And it does really seem like, from everything I could tell, you would obviously have to have Breon to talk about it more, but
I plan to.
It went as good as they possibly could have expected, especially under, mm-hmm. you know, like.
I wish they hadn't played with Max the entire time, other than just the last week. And that to me is one of the strangest decisions possible surrounding that, because they were so like indicative of being like, we need to wear the masks at all time. Then finally like, whatever, we're all leaving.
Well, there was a reason. I talked to Bree on Thursday, and it was because they had finally had a week with no COVID cases. So they were all deemed safe, because at the very beginning, there was a strength coach who long story. He tore his Achilles like the first day, had surgery, got COVID in a hospital, and actually brought it into the bubble. And then they had like 1 or 2 cases a week, and so they weren't able to.
Oh,
But
so that's
this
why
whole
athletes were just dropping off rosters mysteriously.
sometimes yes, and that is their personal health business. I'm just saying, I know there were some positive cases.
That's fair.
And so Bree was saying that this week was the first time that they had, the plan originally was once they entered the bubble, they could, after like the first week, have no mask. But if they had continual cases until the last week, which is why once they had a week that was COVID free, they were deemed able to have no mask.
Okay.
But the whole mask thing, like in North America, in NCAA, they're all wearing masks while they play. Overseas, I'm in a COVID outbreak. We have been told we're not allowed to wear masks while we play. So masks are a touchy subject and still an issue.
That's
and like
fair.
Yeah, and Kerry McDonald actually I was talking to him about COVID, and he said that the WHO is still not mandated, or they said something about like exercise that you shouldn't wear them or whatever, even though we've seen no medical proof that like wearing them while exercise is bad for you. Until WHO says, oh, it's fine, you can wear them during exercise, like each country, each federation is doing their own thing, which has been the whole issue. Everyone's doing their own thing with COVID, and so it's all just a big mess. So there's a reason for what AU is doing, for sure. It definitely seems like it.
I'm fair enough. I mean, I hope that there's a reason. I mean, now that I know that, obviously, it's a different context, and then just showing up not wearing masks in the last week. But it's crazy how much of a difference it made in my enjoyment of watching the games, to be honest. Like, just
really?
Oh yeah, like that one shot where Bree made that big block down the line, and then she turned around and was like stoked about it. Like, yeah. That's just so much more. Like, it was so much more compelling seeing their reactions on their faces. 100%.
Yeah.
It was.
Bree said it also, once again, you have to have Bree on to tell the whole story, but she said it was also really difficult to run, just to communicate, even with middle. She said they weren't running any audible plays at all. Like, they would have to call, like, this is what you're running in serve receive, this is what you're running in transition, because you can breathe, obviously, but it gets wet, sound gets distorted. She's like, I just couldn't hear. And so, like, I'm sure it did affect the actual volleyball, right? Like, if you can't call an audible,
even just in terms of like, if you're gonna yell, your mouth is gonna go wider, and you can't do that if you're wearing the mask.
Yeah, it just, like, I can only imagine during a rally that goes like a minute long, like, or like you dive and it hits, and it, what a distraction. Like, while we're during this outbreak, we're possibly going to play on Sunday. And so we're all like, oh my God, we're going to have to play. We should play in masks. Like, what's that going to be like? Which ones do we wear, the N95, or do you wear like the regular ones? Like, it was a whole big thing. So it's definitely a factor, but it'll be interesting, like, to see what she says about how much it really made a difference.
Yeah, I think Bree should be the next women's national team member. I've been meaning to reach out with her, out to her and touch base with her. I haven't had the time, but now that she's done, I'm sure she'll have a little bit more time to chat.
Yeah, they've been pretty busy in the bubble. Like, they have 3 days and then 1 off day, and then they redraft and reform their teams, right? So there's lots to do in only 3 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they play again.
Yeah,
so
it seems like a crazy schedule. I think it's a fun format, but I would much rather.
You would make some adjustments.
I would make some adjustments, but personally, like it still doesn't give us the option for whoever growing up here in Toronto to go down the street and watch Jen Cross playing in a match. And that's one of my biggest, like, I'd love to see something more, like maybe there's a Toronto team in the future. Like, I'd love to see some sort of professional volleyball where, like, of men's and women's, where like you could physically go to a match, right?
Yeah.
And support it and be real in that way, in that way. But at the end of the day, if this is what we've got, I'm more than happy to support and watch what we've got now. And I mean, that's why, like, even if I wasn't actually going to be watching the matches, that's why it's important that I put it on the screen, make sure that
Sure.
we were getting those
Gotta
numbers.
Get
We got to get the viewership numbers. Absolutely. One time we actually went out to go to sit at the park and have beers with some friends, and I may have just left it on the TV and left it on my laptop, just going. But yeah, I still think that, I think long-term growth, I think, I would love to see a potential club system. Like, wouldn't it be cool if we could have like a relegation, like, club system in North America, where it's just like we could have like smaller towns.
Where are you getting this money to run this situation?
I'm not talking about money. Like, there's going to be a solar flare. It's going to just destroy the entire financial system, and then we're going to start back from scratch.
A singular boat is going to destroy the entire system, and everything's just going to. Everyone's just gonna freak out and lose $10 billion a day because a boat got blown laterally, and then thankfully the moon decided to raise the tide high enough that it's now buoyant again and floating, and everything's fine. It's fine, no big deal.
Oh man.
Do you want to talk about conspiracy theories? That's where there's some. I also think I have a package that's on one of those boats. I am convinced my package was supposed to get here today. It is delayed. It says it is in transit. I am 100% convinced it is on a boat.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like that entire
yeah,
there's like, they're going to be doing it for the next like 3 days, like day and night, to get all of these boats through. So
yeah. But like there was livestock and they had to bring vet, like, the memes though, like there hasn't been a great internet moment in a while, but Suez Canal, that was some funny shit going on.
Definitely one of the best. Well, I don't necessarily know how we made it to talking about the Suez Canal, but it's been 2 hours and 40 minutes. Have you been a little lonely in quarantine?
I mean, yeah, but like I go to get my COVID test every day, so that's like I gotta get my nose poked, but so far it's been okay, but we'll see. Hoping if I get one more negative, I should be free to roam, but I don't know. The plan is for me to stay in Europe. Like half the team is staying in Europe, the other half are coming from Canada, before we do camp in Italy. So just gonna be hanging out in Istanbul for like a month, which isn't the worst place to hang out.
I feel like that's pretty kind of ideal. Like you get to just, like, and just be a person and not just an athlete.
Yeah. Maybe I'll go on some boat trips like I did in the summer. Like, just enjoy life for a month before everything goes crazy again.
Yeah. Well, that sounds a lot of fun. How much longer than you got in your season? Or are you guys done now with the COVID stuff?
Well, we might be forfeiting the rest of season.
Yeah, that's what I kind of figured.
Yeah, we're playing a series against Emily Maglio's team. Mm-hmm. We were supposed to play Sunday, but we had to forfeit 3-0. And then the plan was to play the second match on Thursday up until like this morning at 10, when we had a 7th positive case, which we no longer have enough outsides to play. We only have one outside. So we have one outside, 2 middles. One of their medical is their personal business, so if they want to post about it, they can, but we have one outside remaining. I'm very careful about people's medical business.
No, that's what I'm saying. That
they want to say they have COVID. Oh, I could no, but we only have 2 middles. Ben texted me that he's like, you can just play, and I was like, we only have 2 middles.
You played beach, you could pass.
I know, but who's gonna play middle? We have no one else to play middle.
I don't know. Well, that's crazy. That's a crazy way.
I would play outside in a heartbeat. Like I would do it, and I would have a blast and kill it. I would just go like, I'm a good defender. I am a solid passer. I would just go ham and hit high hands I would love it. I would have a blast. I know what to do to score against Emily. I would know what to do. Watch your fingers, Emily. I'm coming for you. I'm just kidding.
No, we don't need that. Not before VNL, please.
That's true. You're right. VNL, more important than me playing amazing as an outside.
But
for
I mean, like,
a club.
If your last game of the season with Yesseluyert was winning the Challenge Cup, like that's That's pretty damn good.
Yeah,
That was a
I
really
think that's
awkward
why.
little thumb I gave you. Like,
That's why I'm like not upset, because like it's almost comical at this point. Like we've gotten COVID 4 times, and like as you said, like if season has to end without playing playoffs, then winning a CEV Challenge Cup is not the worst way to go out, you know?
Going
So
out on
we
top.
did, yeah, and like we had a party celebration, even though that's how COVID got spread around, but like we had
Super spreader
coming
event.
together. Yeah, but like we had it, the girls must have had it before then, which is the interesting part. Like whether Blage gave it to us or even it could have been before then. We don't know. So
Crazy.
yeah,
Crazy.
it's all right. We'll figure it out.
All right. Well, Jen, that's like officially the longest podcast in a while. That's we're coming up. We're coming
Probably
up.
the longest since the last time you and I did a podcast. Because last time we did a podcast, it was also like 3 hours long.
This does tend to happen. This is correct. It does tend to happen. So yeah. Well, that was
dinner. It's 9:00. I gotta go make dinner. I gotta go eat.
Yeah, I was supposed to be starting to another podcast at 2, and it's now 2:17. So sorry, 5-1 VB. I'll be with you soon. But dude, thanks so much for coming on and chatting with me. It's great to hear that you're healthy, first and foremost. Like I think that's the most important. People die from COVID, so let's remember that. You know, congratulations on what was a great season, but I know it was also a great season for you, given that maybe things personally weren't going the greatest. I do want to give a big shout out to your brother as well too. I know that was a big moment for you this year. I saw that he gave you a nice little shout out when you won when you won the Challenge Cup, and I thought that was special too. So yeah, I'm just really happy and proud that you were able to persevere and kill it this year the way that you did.
Thank you. Yeah, it was by far the hardest year for me personally with all my family stuff going on. But yeah, it went well. It went as good as it possibly could have under all the circumstances. So yeah, thank you.
Well,
I'm really happy.
That's great. And you know what? Take some time off in Istanbul. You deserve it. And then let's go to Italy and kill it in the bubble, because as we've talked about profusely today, I'm very excited for what this women's national team can do, not only this year but in the years to come. And I think that your impact will be very long lasting, both on the court and off the court. So I'm glad that you're going to be there with them.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you very much for listening today. It was a long one. We're almost at 2 hours and 45 minutes right now. But yeah, if you were watching this on YouTube, you can check this out on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe for more of these chats. And Jen, thank you very much. And maybe we'll have another one when the roster's released and we can talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys, thank you very much. Have a good one. Peace.
Bye.